Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order, so if we could stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hear the roll call, please.
David Doherty.
Here.
Michael Cox.
Here.
Peter Hansel. Here. Rohit Desai.
Here.
Christopher Cole.
Here.
Chris Williams, represented by Richard Canelo.
Here.
And Chairman Charles Gray.
Here. Proof of publication.
Items were published in the Sunday Times on November 11, 2019, November 29, 2019, December 27, 2019, January 3, 2020, January 10, 2020, or by affidavit of mail-out and declaration.
Okay, thank you. For those of you who intend to come up and speak today and give testimony, if you would stand and raise your right hand. Looks like we might be here for a while.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God?
I do, so help me God.
Thank you. And welcome today. We're the Planning Commission. We're appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and we meet twice monthly. We serve as a local planning agency, and we hold public hearings and transmit to the Board of County Commissioners recommendations on comprehensive plan amendments, land development code amendments, rezonings, and conditional use requests. The Planning Commission is the final decision-making body for special exceptions, certain appeals, variance requests, and certain alternative standard requests. However, final decisions may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. If anyone is in opposition to any development code amendment, rezoning, conditional use, or any item where the Planning Commission transmits a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, it's important for you to attend the appropriate Board of County Commissioner meeting. We have those dates available for those of you who may wish to do that. For those of you who are not familiar with the format of the meetings that we do here, we have 3 different segments. We have continuances, and it's been our custom to approve continuances that are requested by the staff or the applicant unless we have extenuating circumstances. We have a consent agenda. That's part of the agenda where the items have not received any objections from public or staff, and those items will be on consent. We'll go through them one at a time in case there is something on consent that you want to speak to today. When I bring it up, raise your hand. If you'd like to have it taken off consent, we'll take it off consent, and it'll be discussed today with the regular items, which is the third group of applications. And those items will be placed before us and be read individually for us to go over today, and you'll have a full chance to hear those presentations and make comments that you feel are appropriate. Applicants will have 3 minutes to make a presentation unless they requested additional time, and the people in the audience, most of you who have questions or concerns, will have 3 minutes to come up and state your concerns. Following those concerns, the applicant will have an opportunity to come up and answer those questions, hopefully to your satisfaction. Is there anyone here that's here for anything other than what is on the current agenda? This would be the time for you to come up and speak, if so. I don't see anyone. So this is probably a good time to remind you to please, if you have your phone with you, to please silence it, put it on the silent position or turn it off. And I'll do the same thing so that we won't interrupt somebody that's speaking. So I think that covers it, Denise. We don't have any minutes to approve?
No minutes to approve, but you do have a request for 15 minutes of total time.
Yes, we
On-
do.
Okay.
Okay. And I think that's for what, number 8, PC 8?
That's on item P8.
Yeah. Can you hear me when I'm talking on this thing? Okay, can you give me a little more volume?
So just in case, can folks hear me? Okay. So what I was actually stating is the chairman, during the beginning of the meeting, states whether folks have asked for any additional time, which is typically requested at least 24 hours in advance. There was a request on item P8 for a total of 15 minutes of time from the applicant. That's what I was stating.
And so we'll be keeping track of the time when people come up to speak, and so don't feel slighted if we have to cut you off short. Sometimes people are a little bit more long-winded than we have time for, especially when we have this many people. So we'll do our best to give everybody the chance to speak. Can you hear me now? Has it made any difference? Are we good? Okay. If it's a problem, tell me and I'll yell. Is this loud enough? Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commission members, Denise Hernandez, Planning and Development. If I may be, please bring your attention to item PC7 because that's a continuance item and I want to get that one out of the way, please.
Yes, ma'am.
PC7 is PDD 20-0113 for conditional use for coastal landfill disposal of Florida mining operation permit and conditional use amendment for an existing mining and construction and demolition debris facility, disposal facility. This is a recommendation. The request for continuance is actually to February 27th, Planning Commission at 1:30 p.m. in Newport Richey, not January 23rd, because that would be today.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? I don't see any objections. We have a motion?
Move to continue time certain.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Granted.
Okay, item PC1 is PDD 20-7428. It's a Mango Hills MPUD, Master Plan Unit Development. William Donald Mixon, Randy and Heidi Yarborough. It's a rezoning from AR Agricultural Residential, AC Agricultural, R3 Medium Density Residential, MF2 Multiple Family High Density, and C1 Neighborhood Commercial Districts to a Master Plan Unit Development District to allow 415 single-family detached and/or attached townhome units on approximately 69.18 acres. This comes to you with a recommendation of approval with condition as provided in your agenda packet.
Okay, and that's on the consent agenda. Is the applicant present? Anyone here to object?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to pull that one. I have a question there.
Okay, so we're going to pull PC1 for a question from the school board.
Item PC2 is PDD 20-0096, and that is a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment. On this item, you're sitting as the local planning agency, CPAL 19-017 Duke Land Exchange Part 2. It's for a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment to future land use maps 2-15 and sheet 17, changing from IH industrial heavy to ROS major recreation open space on approximately 13.65 acres of property located immediately north of Anclote River Park on the west side of Bailey's Bluff Road and 1,170 feet north of Hickory Lane. On this item, we're asking the local planning agency to find this item consistent with the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan and recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay, is there anyone here to speak on this item? See no one?
It's also known as the Duke Land Exchange Part 1.
Okay.
Denise, on this one, for some reason, our agenda memo says
Yeah.
there was a change to the agenda item.
Yeah,
Why
we had a
does it say
glitch
that?
in the system on this. What happened is that originally the agenda was put together as a BCC cover sheet, and the cover sheet had to be changed to a Planning Commission cover sheet, and apparently Sire put this under the memorandum information because we had to change the cover sheet.
Okay, do you have the correct memo number?
The correct memo number is PDD 20-009, or 096.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Item PC3, again, you're sitting as a local planning agency on this item, PDD 20-097. It's a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, CPAL 1918, Duke Land Exchange Part 2, for a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment to a future land use map 2-15 and sheet 17, changing from Res 6 residential 6 dwelling units per gross acre to PSP public semi-public on approximately 75 acres of real property located on the east side of Bailey's Bluff Road, north of the existing Duke Energy substation. On this item, we are requesting that the Planning Commission find this item consistent with the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan and recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay. Anybody have this pulled off the consent? No one here to speak? Okay.
Item PC4 is, now you're back as the Planning Commission. Item PC4 is PDD 20-7449 in the name of Oakley Place MPUD, Eric David Land Corporation, Primera Base Inc., Second Base Holdings LLC, Calvary Corporation. It's for a rezoning from AC Agricultural, C2 General Commercial, C3 Commercial Light Manufacturing Districts to an MPUD Master Plan Unit Development District to allow 400 multifamily apartment units, 100 single-family attached townhome units, and a maximum of 150,000 square feet of commercial retail on approximately 78.96 acres. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions as contained in your agenda packet.
All right. Is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? See no objections?
And as I understand it, items PC5 and PC6 will be pulled.
Yes.
So if that's the case, then that is the end of your consent agenda.
Okay, so if everybody picked up on that, that's PC5 and PC6 will be heard today in full, just in case you have questions about it.
And one.
What's that?
And
Mike?
PC1.
And one,
PC1.
yeah. That was those two we didn't do individually, though. Okay, so we're on, let's see. Want to go back and deal with the ones we pulled?
So you got to do a motion on the remainder of the consent
Yeah.
agenda.
Okay,
I'll move approval of PC 2, 3, and 4.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
You're up.
Did you want me to do the presentation, or did you just have a question for PC1?
I just have questions about the number and type of units,
Okay.
because I see there's 450 single-family detached and/or single-family attached, and a minimum of 80, and then if that other parcel is developed, then the 80 can go into that one. I just need the total maximum number, I guess, of each type, worst-case scenario, I guess.
Right now, all we have is just what you have in front of you. Okay, applicant's here to jump in.
All right.
Barbara Wilhite, 6327 Grand Boulevard, Newport Richey, Florida, 34652. Our request is 415 single-family detached or townhomes. So it can be a mixture. It could be all single-family detached, it could be all townhomes, or some mixture thereof.
Okay.
We
So
did
then if
send-
that other parcel is developed, it's not going to be 415 plus 80? It's just 415 max?
15 max.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Rob? No?
Good.
Good. All right. So do I have a motion to approve? PC1.
I'll make the motion to approve PC1.
We have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we're going to PC5 now. PC5 is PDD 20-2079. This is a variance, SDG South Acquisition LLC. It's a variance for reduction in the minimum side yard setbacks from 7.5 feet to 5 feet for all single-family residential lots within the proposed subdivision in an R4 high-density residential district. Parcel is located in south central Pasco County on the north side of Collier Parkway, County Line Road, approximately 550 feet west of Livingston Road. If this looks familiar to you, is because this came to the Planning Commission sometime in May or June of last year for rezoning, which was rezoning 7406 to R4 from AR to R4 with deed restrictions to limit the number of lots to a total of 65. The reason for this variance request is that at some point in time, probably sometime in 2018 or so, there was a conversation about lessening the side setback for R4 high-density residential district lots, where that the R4 lots can potentially go down to 5 feet, very similarly as you see in MPUD, Master Plan Unit Development Districts. My thought is that perhaps that setback was never contemplated in the Land Development Code, because it wasn't until sometime in 2014 that the Board of County Commissioners made some changes to the Land Development Code to add some specific requirements in 901.2.k.2b to have 5-foot setback reductions. So we will be within the ordinance development team, and it may happen either this summer or during the fall, where that we will be amending the R4 high-density residential district zoning to have the potential of reducing the setback to 5 feet in R4, so as long as the requirements in 901.2.k.2b are met. So I did put in front of you a gentleman by the last name of Pritchard, did submit into record a letter of opposition. He was also the same gentleman that opposed the rezoning back in last year because he had some issues with the buffer along the western boundary of this property, which would have been the eastern property of his boundary. The recommendation is approval with conditions. I did consult with the county, the Planning and Development Department engineer, and one of the conditions that was very important to the Planning and Development Department engineer is that these homes, when they're proposed, that they not be proposed with side entry walkways, and the applicant has agreed to do front entry, front-loaded, sorry, that's not what I mean, front entry walkways. If there's side entry walkways, so as long as a walkway is not in the 5 feet, that's acceptable as well. But these will not have 5-foot entry walkways within that 5-foot setback, which would further, may have further issue with the drainage. So I'm here for any questions you may have, and you may want to call for anyone in the audience.
The applicant present. Is anyone here to object? No hands.
Barbara Wilhite again, 6327 permit, excuse me, I keep doing that, Grand Boulevard, 34652. I was there too long, I guess.
I guess so.
We brought this variance forward. It's kind of a code catch-up. Quite a few years, a couple years ago, when county engineer was Jim Widman, the issue was 5 foot versus 7.5 feet. 7.5 feet was the county's code because of drainage, and it's the drainage between the lots, and the county's code provided a mechanism for 5-foot setbacks with certain conditions, and that's why you heard about this side entry. That was important to staff because it's all about the difference between 5 and 7.5 in the county's code is about drainage. And so if we have side entry, we have a sidewalk in the drainage area, and so that's why that condition is a condition of this. So we're just providing for something that the county provided for in their code for this project, and providing for the 5-foot side yard setback. I'm available if you have any questions.
Okay, are any questions from up here?
So I do have a few. Barbara, so Denise stated that it's going to be limited to 65 units. Is that still going to be the case?
That's correct.
Yes, it's a deed restriction. It's recorded in official records book of the Pasco County.
So what are we giving up by them not going through the MPUD process? Maybe that's probably a better question I should have asked earlier.
So my understanding, and Barbara may want to chime in on this, the 65 units was also part of what would have triggered an MPUD with the trip generation. Is that accurate, or?
So, no.
Okay.
Single-family trip MPUDs at about 159
Okay,
units
okay.
under your table 901.5. I read it a lot. What the difference is, we had to go through transportation review. At preliminary plan, we have to go through habitat review. So we had to go through the same things for this zoning and for the site development as an MPUD. So there's no different, other than cultural resource assessment, which is a state requirement anyhow that you have to do in connection with your permitting. There's no particular difference between MPUD and the counties. The MPUDs are really for mixture where you have more than one product. Taking a one-product 65-unit subdivision through an MPUD process when they're trying to focus on mixed-use master plan developments isn't the most efficient use of everybody's time because our review is the same. So that's the answer between doing a Euclidean and doing an MPUD.
If I remember right, when that item came up before, it was being limited to the 65 lots, but I don't remember what it was capable of being built at.
Much
Glad to see
more.
I'm not the only one
Yeah.
that's having an
Yeah,
issue
well,
with memory.
Yeah. I'd have to pull out my file.
I
but-
think
but-
the memory was the fact that there, if I'm correct, was that because there was some a water fixture in the back or something to deal with the drainage of the area. But I think that that's what I recall on this particular, in reviewing the map, it appears to have some water towards the back of it.
Right, I don't have the calculation, but you can look, it's a Res 3, and it's 40 acres. So
Okay.
our engineer, project engineer is here, and he may know that number, but
But it's fair
We
to
did
say
limit
it's a
to
lot more than
60.
65 lots.
correct.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to, just in general, I don't like smaller setbacks. I just think it isn't the best way to develop a neighborhood by having houses 10 feet apart. So on the surface, I don't really care for that. I would prefer to see larger setbacks. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out is where is the hardship by us, if the property is able to hold more than 65 units, why do we need to have this variance granted?
So the issue with 5 foot versus 7.5 is drainage. And so we're able to meet the same requirements for 5 foot setbacks to meet the drainage requirements. That's the difference in the county's code. That's the difference between the two. The
But
county
but
said-
I think that if you can do it in 5, you certainly ought to be able to do it in 7.5.
Right, well, we'd like to be able to use the code that says we can use 5 foot setbacks, because that's the county policy. Board of County Commissioners have said, we find it appropriate to have 5 foot setbacks if you can meet these drainage requirements. That's what the code says. So we're asking for the variance to be able to use the code, because when they did the code, they didn't link it to the Euclidean districts, which they are now going to do. It's just, I think that was just an oversight, because the Board of County Commissioners was saying, it's our policy that it's 5 foot setbacks are acceptable if you meet these drainage requirements.
Providing you go through an MPUD.
It's debatable under the current code whether the intent was to provide that for all developments or just for MPUDs. And by going to the variance, we can come forward and do the variance so that it's clear that we can do the 5 foot side yard setbacks under that provision of the code.
So the variance standards, it says that you have to meet all of the compliances and the criteria of the land development code. So when I read through what the criteria is, and then I read the response, I honestly don't think that they meet all of them. Because it states in here it shouldn't be for a financial gain. But in the very first response, it says, given the time and expense associated, that is why we're asking for this variance. So we don't have to go through the time and expense.
That's county time and expense as well. They have a lot of MPUDs, Mr. Cox, and so this was with staff. How is the best way to move the project forward? Working together with staff, And this was the way we thought was the best way, given all the resources, having people spend money just to spend money and put more burden on county staff for no benefit, was the reason why we brought it forward in this manner.
I don't think that you've demonstrated the need to having a 5-foot setback versus a 7.5.
Well, the need is based upon the product type. So,
I don't know. I don't know what the rest of the commission thinks.
going through an MPD would not have made any difference to this particular issue. I've had lots of MPDs, and it wouldn't have made a difference.
It just seems like you have plenty of land there, and you're trying to build only 65 units. Why not spread them out a little bit?
Because-
Wouldn't it make a better development?
So it's product-driven, market-driven, and that is, people want smaller lots, larger houses. And so we have lots of product and lots of market, that's the market. These just happen to be bigger lots because there are 4 lots. But the side yard setback, it is the norm to have the 10-foot in between the units.
I think people want as much as they can afford, and they may not just be able to afford a little larger land.
Well, this,
I mean, your
these
engineer's
are
walked
larger
up, so
lots.
he has some comments, I'm sure.
Commissioner, Jeremy Couch, 17937 Huntingbow Circle, Lutz 33558. It's also about an efficient use of land. The side yard of a home, right now, if you drive through all of the neighborhoods being built in Pasco County, 5-foot side yard is the standard. Pretty much every new community that we see has a 5-foot side yard, and the code has some very specific restrictions to allow that to happen. What that does, though, it's an efficiency standpoint also. A lot of people don't sit on their side yard, whether it's 5-foot or 7.5 foot, and enjoy it. But what it does is it's changed the model of single family from a wider, shallower lot to a narrower, deeper that maximizes the backyard also. So instead of having a lot like the code requires, which is 60 by 100, you end up with a lot that is still 60 by 100 that fits a 50-foot house. And the backyards typically go to 120 now because it allows that amenity to be in the home. So I understand conventionally some of the older neighborhoods have smaller side yards, but the trend has truly shifted, and it is efficient. It makes efficient of the infrastructure out front, and again, it's in the side yard. It's really how you get to your backyard. It's not anything you would enjoy on a regular basis. As far as this project, we do have higher density, but we are designing a community that maximizes open space. We have some really cool lakes on this specific project that we want to make maximum use of and congregate our large parks around it. That's our selling point here. So I think the code does provide the fact that the R4 does not give us this option that it affords others is a hardship that we want to take advantage of.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, are there any other questions from up here?
I'll move to approve PC 5 with conditions.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
So, under discussion, I'm just curious, do the engineers up here, do you guys agree with this? Just curious.
Again, I'm an architect, I'm not an engineer.
Yeah.
In the architectural point of view, yes, I agree. I understand your concerns in reference to the setback. It's, in my opinion, it's more attractive. Bigger setback, in this case, will be 15 feet between the edge of every single house. But I understand the reasonable point of view of the engineer. So it's based on interpretation. The code is there. I think they have been doing everything that they need to do to meet the requirements from the staff. And I don't see how we can, myself, can oppose to something like this. You know, it's clear that we have so many communities in Pasco County that we had 5 feet setbacks, not all, We have communities that we have much bigger setback, there is no doubt about it. But it's just based on the concept of the design of the houses that they are offering that is kind of a little bit more different, and like he says, trending. It is. It's like that. And again, I don't see a firm argument here how myself can oppose to the development. I would like to see a preliminary site plan that would be much better. And that will give us a better idea about the implantation of those houses in the land. But we see just the lot. But I understand your criteria, and I believe that is reasonable.
Mr. Chair, a motion was made and seconded, and I call the motion.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. We've had the motion called. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, so now we're moving on to PC6, which is a variance, PDD 202080. And this is a variance under the name of Jacob Cross Holdings LLC for reduction in the required minimum east front setback from 20 feet to 17.5 feet for building numbers 3 through 7, reduction in the required minimum west front setback from 20 to 17.5 feet for building number 12, reduction in the required minimum side setback from 10 feet to 7.5 feet for buildings number 1 through 5, 7 through 8, and 12 through 18, and a reduction in the required minimum rear setback from 15 feet to 5.9 feet for building number 4 in a multifamily medium-density district. The parcel is located in southwest Pasco County. It consists of the preserve at Cypress Creek, preserve at Cypress Creek, and it's on the northeast and northwest intersection of Preserve at Gulf Trace, I apologize, Gulf Trace Boulevard and Jacob Crossing Lane. On this item, the side setback reductions come to you as a result of a staff error. The preliminary development plan, it was approved on 8/27 of 18 for 100 actually townhome units. That's incorrect. There's conflicting setback information between the approval memo and the construction plan. So and I'll try to depict that, show that to you here. So as you can see, the approval memo and the preliminary development plan clearly states that the front setback is 10, front setback is 20, side is 10, rear is 15. But if you look at the actual graphic, it shows you that you can have a 7.5-foot setback. And the same situation, this is part of the construction plan, the typical lot layout in the construction plans. So we approve that. So basically, the engineer of record approached me with some questions on their property, and as I looked at the rest of their proposed plans, I found that there were issues with side setbacks throughout. When that actually came to the Planning and Development Department staff, we also found that there were 2 front setback issues and a rear setback issue on these lots. And again, it's I can show you all the visuals where they're using 7.5-foot side setbacks, as was shown in their approved construction plans and their approval memo. And this comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions on this item, and I'm here for any questions.
Okay, any questions?
So there was a disconnect between what was approved and what then was actually permitted to have?
Yeah, it was completely, it was contradictory. So the verbal information on what was approved, so when things were shown verbally, it says 10-foot side setbacks. When things were shown pictorially, so graphically in drawings, they were showing 7.5-foot setbacks. So, and that was on their approval memo, on their approved construction plans.
So David, where does this, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that the county shouldn't have issued the permit for it, but they did. So, but did the developer submit this and they?
Well, there's really an error on both the developer's part and the county staff's part. The developer submitted something that would didn't meet the setbacks, but then the county staff approved it. So it's an error on both sides, if that's your question.
Yeah, yeah, so, and this project's under construction, correct?
Yes, and the engineer record may be here. My understanding is that they have, at this point, it's all platted, and at this point, they have submitted for, I believe, some model center lots.
So it could be changed then?
Well, they'd have to replat the project, wouldn't they, if they did that?
Good afternoon. Jay Hunting, I'm with 3030 Starkey Boulevard, Newport Richey, 34655. The project, I think during the review of the project, of the preliminary plan and also of the construction plans, the focus by the engineers and the focus by county staff was the constraints that are on the land because of the Category 1 wetlands that are on both the east side and the west side of the project. In addition to, there's a right-of-way preservation corridor along Gulf Trace that we needed to respect. And I believe that's how the process went forward with that focus, and that the setback issues were it was an error on the part, on both sides. I don't think there was, it's just staff. I think the engineer, there was some issues there also. The other thing I'd like to point out is that in the code, and this may have been part of the confusion on the part of the developer, on the code and the yard regulations for the MF1 district, it talks about the required setbacks, but it also, under B in 518.7, says all structures shall be separated by not less than 15 feet. So there may have been some confusion there as to what the separation between the buildings needed to be. So that's really the issue with the setbacks, was because of the constraints on the property due to the environmental considerations. And the development itself is quite a distance away from any adjoining properties because of those wetlands that are there.
My concern really isn't the adjoining properties, it's this development and the people who are going to eventually live there. I mean, I know there's a lot of drainage issues and wetland concerns with this piece of property, and I'm really concerned that by allowing this, that we're going to create some flooding issues there now. And I'm also very concerned about the front setbacks. I mean, 20 feet front setback is not a lot. You know, I actually tried to get a perspective of it today, and my wife drives a mid-sized car, and I measured it, and it's 16 and a half feet. So you want to go from 20 down to 17 and a half, so you're not, I mean, I'm not sure how you would park a car there.
On those are just on two corner lots. So they don't affect the principal front. It affects the secondary front. So it's on a corner lot. So they will not be parking, please correct me if I'm incorrect, they will not be parking a vehicle on that, because that's really, in essence, their side, but it's their secondary front. So if I can show that perhaps here. Here's an example. If you look at 18, their driveway is at the 20. This is their corner. So the 17.51, the reduction is in the secondary front.
Okay.
Not in the principal front. And that's the case for the two buildings that are, the two lots that are requesting that reduction.
3 and 7?
It's their secondary front. Yeah, let me see if I can find the other to show you. Yeah, here's the second one, same situation. On this lot, lot 30, their entry is at, this is now going crazy, their entry is at Inlet Breeze Way, and that's where they would park their vehicle. This is the secondary front on Jacob Crossing Lane. So no vehicle would be parked here. Is that
That's
correct statement?
Yeah, that's correct. And also, let me just briefly address the flooding issue. This project, was issued all the appropriate permits. The Water Management District reviewed it. County staff scrutinized this quite a bit because of the location, because of the wetlands on both sides.
Right.
And we have looked over, our firm has looked over the drainage calculations and the plans themselves that were done by the engineer, and we don't see any flooding issues that could be exacerbated by reducing the setback between the buildings.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from up here?
Did you call for public comment on this one?
Not yet.
Oh.
Okay, is there anyone here that, to object or have questions? No one? All right, I have a motion then.
I move that we approve PC 6 with conditions.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Erica Wendlands, Planning and Development. You will be now sitting as the local planning agency. Item P8, PDD 200325 is a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, CPAL 1916, Little Lake Thomas. Proposed is a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment from future land uses Res 3, residential 3 dwelling units per gross acre, and ROR, retail office residential, to Res 6, residential 6 dwelling unit per gross acre, to allow for townhome development on approximately 41.758 acres. The proposed development is located in the central market area and located at the intersection of Little Lake Thomas Road and Land O'Lakes Boulevard on the west side of Land O'Lakes, about a half-mile north of Erin Cutoff. The subject property is predominantly surrounded by residential development to the north-south, which is located the preserve at Lake Thomas, and to the east, the Bambi Mobile Home and RV Park, and to the west. There's also mixed commercial that hugs Land O'Lakes Boulevard, including Elite Fence and Paul's Mobile Mechanic Service. There are also prominent water bodies to the south, west, and east, and predominantly on Little Lake Thomas Circle or onto the west. The existing future land uses is Res 3 and ROR. The surrounding flus include Res 3 and ROR. There is an established development pattern at Land O'Lakes Boulevard and Caliente Boulevard. There is Res 9 and Res 6 at the northeast and southeast corners. The proposed flue to Res 6 will serve as a transition and step down in density and intensity at Land O'Lakes Boulevard from ROR, which hugs Land O'Lakes Boulevard, to the single-family dwelling residential located all the way to the west. And with that, Planning and Development recommends approval to the local planning recommends that the local planning agency find the proposed amendment consistent with the comprehensive plan, and to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, we have any questions for Erica? Any questions up here?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
The total acreage is how much, and then how much of that is ROR, and how much is the rest 3?
I have 41 acres, but it's quite small, but I don't know the percentages of which is Res 3 versus ROR, but I can find that for you. But it's small, but I do know with ROR, the residential dwelling unit count, the density is 24. But I can find that for you. So it's very small, but it still encaptures the ROR.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, anything else for Erica? No? Barbara? This is when you requested the extra time.
Barbara Wilhite, 6327 Grand Boulevard, Newport Richey, Florida, 34652, for the applicant. I just wanted to point out to you, you're sitting as the LPA, and your role is to review the comprehensive plan amendment and recommend to the board whether they should transmit it to the state. So you have your hearing today, make a recommendation to the board hears it and decides whether to transmit the comp plan amendment. You still have the zoning that'll come before you. There's a pending MPUD. I'm going to go through the history just a little bit here before we let the residents speak. But we have a pending MPUD that'll come back before you. And then ultimately, both the comp plan and the MPUD will come before the board, and they'll make a final decision. When they decide to adopt the comp plan, if they do, they'll make the decision on the MPUD as well. So just so that's a little bit of process. You're just being asked to transmit a comp plan amendment, which staff has said is consistent. They went through the land uses with you, went through the transitioning. And really, I think you're going to hear about a lot of details here that are really zoning issues. We absolutely want to make sure we're transparent and answering all the questions and talking about all the things that neighbors want to talk about. But most of that you'll hear again when we get to the MPUD coming before you. The other thing I wanted to just point out, a little bit of history of what brought us here today. We've been working on this project for a while. We met with staff in July and August, and they talked about things that were important to them as we brought the project forward. We filed our comp plan amendment in September. In October, we filed a rezoning, a Euclidean rezoning to MF1. And then we had a pre-app with county staff regarding our actual site plans, again, getting more feedback from staff. We had 2 neighborhood meetings, one on the 4th of December and one on the 18th of December, quite productive. And as a result of the culmination of this planning effort, 13 key changes were made. And our planner, who's Alexis Crespo, she's going to go through that. We can do that in a little bit. I think it's more important that we hear the residents and their concerns and make sure we address those and talk about those. But and then ultimately we continued our hearing. This hearing was supposed to be last month. We continued it so it would allow more opportunity to dialogue with the neighbors. My client has a large email list from his neighborhood meetings. He emails regular updates, changes that he's made to the plans. There's been quite an extensive outreach, more than I've seen on most any other project I've worked on. We, last week, withdrew our Euclidean district and filed an MPUD. The MPUD allows us for all the things, the 13 things we say we're going to do. In a Euclidean district, you can't condition those, but in an MPUD, you can provide conditions. So all the things we say we are going to do are going to be conditioned. I've actually drafted those conditions, full transparency. Staff has those to say, here are our commitments, and here's how they look in conditions for the MPUD. Again, the MPUD is not before you today, but I think the history is important. I'm going to sit down, and my team is here. We're going to listen to the residents like you will and see if we can address their concerns. Thank you.
Okay, take lots of notes, Barbara. Take lots of notes. Take lots of notes.
Yes.
Okay, I assume many of you are here to speak to this particular application, so just from my perspective, can you raise your hand if you're here to speak on this issue? Okay. All right, so as you come forward, please clearly speak into the microphone, state your name and your address, and then your concerns. We'll try to get those things answered for you. Just come up one at a time, and for those of you who are further to the back, if you want to come forward so you can get up there right away, that'd be great.
Good afternoon. My name is Shirley Schmidt. I live at 21133 Marsh Hawk Drive.
Can you hear Shirley? Now you're going to have to probably pull that a little closer.
Start over.
That's right.
My name is Shirley Schmidt. I live at 21133 Marsh Hawk Drive, Land O'Lakes, Florida 34638. My property is located in the preserve at Lake Thomas, and I own 300 feet of my property immediately adjacent to the subject property. I would like to thank the developer for having 2 meetings with us and listening to our concerns and making some revisions in an attempt to gain our support. He's made revisions to address many of our concerns, but there is one overwhelming objection that cannot be mitigated if this project is approved: density and its impact on traffic. The Ridge Road Extension Project, which is going forward within the next few years, will dump a huge flow of traffic onto 41 just north of where this project is located. That alone will result in an unbearable increase in the traffic volume. Now add yet another 400 vehicles from this project, and you'll be one step closer to total gridlock. I wonder if any of those who will be making the decision to approve or disapprove of this are residents of this area, or at least have had the opportunity to travel 41 between 54 and 42 during the morning and afternoon commute. Trust me, it's awful. The traffic light at 41 and Aaron Cutoff is dangerous already. Residents from the proposed townhouse development who need to go north will be turning south onto 41 and crossing 3 lanes of traffic in a space of approximately 200 yards to do a U-turn. That southbound turn lane creates a blind zone for those headed north and attempting to turn into our subdivision. We in the preserve at Lake Thomas lost a resident not less than 3 months ago to a horrible accident with this exact scenario. The Planning and Zoning Departments and the County Commissioners will be responsible for the negative impact on traffic if this zoning change to R6 is approved. Please protect the rights and safety of the existing residents with your no vote on this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Keith Haltz with Tampa Bay Premier Realty, 5314 Van Dyke Road, Lutz 33548. I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to read a letter from the owners to the board on one of the parcels under consideration. First, we wanted to acknowledge your time and say thank you for allowing us to present to the board as we appreciate your years of service to our local communities. We are the controlling partners in the ownership of 14-plus acre parcel located off Little Lake Thomas Road and have owned the property since 1996. For many years, we have operated our location off Highway 41 that is associated with our business. While we have lived here in the Land O'Lakes area and established roots, we have and continue to be supporters of the community. We have lived on Thomas Circle, Land O'Lakes, Florida, since 1971 and have owned it since 1987. In 2007, we built our existing home on this property directly across from this development. We have a long-standing invested interest in our community and expect to maintain our property value. Our son and daughter-in-law have a residence across from the parcel being reviewed for development. Degrading our home value or their value is not in our interest, which is the reason for the developer guiding the development process. Before this property was purchased, the previous owner had a horse boarded on it, and the only county restriction was you could not have an outhouse. Also at this time, US 41 was a 2-lane road going into Tampa. Just north of Little Lake Thomas Road on 41 was a high railway overpass that made it difficult if you were going north to turn left into Little Lake Thomas Road to see the traffic coming from the opposite direction. Many fatalities and terrible accidents happened on that corner before Pasco County took down the land bridge and constructed the 4-lane highway with a dedicated turn lane that exists today and has created a safe entry and exit into Little Lake Thomas Road from US 41. That 4-lane expansion made it possible for our county to grow, and as county leaders envisioned it would. Along with it, Land O'Lakes High School was built as many other county services were built, so we did not have to drive to Dade City, Zephyr Hills, or Newport Richey to renew our driver's license plates, or pay our taxes. A new fire station was moved from a tiny building on Hale Road with hardly enough room to park an ambulance to a much larger facility on Highway 41. That 4-lane highway has also made it possible so we don't have to drive all the way into Tampa which we did when we first moved here to buy groceries, go to the drugstore, hardware store, get gas at a station that had more than 3 pumps.
Excuse me, sir. Your 3 minutes is up, and I'm concerned that you're not finished with your presentation.
Yeah,
Do
they
you have
didn't give me an idea. It was
some
only
parting
3
comments
minutes.
you'd
or-
like to make? Because we have a lot of people that need to speak.
I understand that. Can I just read one of the paragraphs, and I'll try to get through it quick, because this is one of the main things. We have been presented and read all the letters received by the process of rezoning and understanding of some of the more major concerns which have been presented, as we also currently live near the property being proposed for development. After reviewing the developer's plans, commitments, and obligations he's written into the zoning conditions, we are confident he has gone above and beyond addressing our concerns and our neighbors' concerns, and the resulting project is an excellent fit for the area. Among other things, those commitments and obligations include removing access to Little Lake Thomas Road, creating a substantial buffer to 8 single-family adjacent neighbors to the south, including a large pond and solid fence with considerable landscaping and enhanced buffers and ponds on Little Lake Thomas in Thomas Circle.
Excuse me, sir. That's a really a long paragraph you're reading there.
I know, but it was one of the more...
I wish you could just speak from the heart, but unfortunately, we just don't have that kind of time. So I'd like to say that what I heard you say mainly is that you're concerned about it degrading the home values in the area, but you also sound like you're somewhat supportive of the development. So which is it?
Being in real estate for 15 years and living in Land O'Lakes area, I've seen a lot of the growth that's come through. I mean,
I know, but you're starting to talk like a politician.
I'm just saying.
Are you in favor of it, or are you opposed to it?
I'm in favor of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude. I just want to get everybody to have a chance to speak.
Guarantee mine won't take that long.
Oh, good.
Hi, Joel Brown, 21127 Marsh Hawk Drive, Land O'Lakes. I do live in the preserve. My biggest concerns is the flooding of the property, because when it does rain, and we do have the flooding from there, we are the north end of the Booker Creek chain of lakes. Our lake does not, it floods off to the south side. So by them putting in that large community, which will be buildings, blacktop, I do see that they do have the ponds for runoff. We have 4 ponds in our community right now, and when it does flood, the weirs do go into the lake, and it does raise the lake level considerably. 1 inch of rain usually equals 2 to 3 inches of rise in the lake. So, and also, I want to find out how they're going to be able to turn out of that community, as the previous person spoke, to do the right-hand turn to the left-hand turn back up there. I noticed the county does put a police officer up at 41 and Central Avenue at certain hours of the day. I would like to know how many residents live off Central Avenue.
Okay.
That's a 0.
We'll try to
That's the
get you.
county property up there.
Okay.
So are they going to place a police officer to get the people in and out of that community each day?
We'll see if we can get you a response on that.
I know they're not
So
going to.
you're,
I understand that.
when was your area developed?
The preserve at Lake Thomas,
Where you live?
our house was built in 2002.
2002, okay.
Yes, sir. I am against the property being built.
Okay, you just want to make sure we understand, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, who'll be next?
Hey now. How are you guys? Scott Hitt, 21008 Little Lake Thomas, also 6141 Thomas Circle, multiple family owner. Been there since 1993. So, got a couple things. Current infrastructure that's existing right now inside of our community. Twofold: drainage, ingress, and egress. Second, multifamily issues that are inherent with density. It's never a good idea. So, the first one, current infrastructure, we have no drainage. You concrete that up, and that water's got to go somewhere. And I live on a pretty little lake, spring-fed, beautiful, bass that can eat a chihuahua. It's awesome. So it's going to be bad. You've heard the ingress and egress comments. Don't need to beat it to death, but it's bad. Next one, multifamily issues inherent with density. You get a bunch of people piled in on top of one another, and there's going to be stuff that starts happening. Right now, we leave our doors unlocked. We have stuff all over the place. Nothing goes missing. It's kind of a cool place. It's a gem that's hidden away in here. So, whenever you do that, and you have that many people plugged in on top of that, now we're going to have stuff missing. Then I'm going to have cameras, and I might have to shoot somebody. So, not a good idea. I vote no. Please know that we are not in favor of it. We're not against development. Development's good, just not R6.
What is good?
R3 is good.
Oh, okay.
R3 is good. You know, single families, put them on there, third acres, it's good. It's all good. So thank you guys for hearing us. I sent you guys emails. Thank you for responding. I appreciate that a bunch. Please, for millage sake alone, do not vote yes for this. It's just not a good fit. It's not a good fit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Those are the ones that they don't want to get shot.
Thank you for your time. My name is Joe Seidel. I live at 20955 Lake Thomas Road, Land O'Lakes. I've been a resident of Lake Thomas since 1982. I recall when we had meetings to establish the land use out here. You may know Georgiana Ratliff, Florida Land Design. She was the one that held the team, had the team of several people here that were in that same meeting. We openly established what the land use was around here. The people along 54 said 6 units per acre. The people further north of us on the west side of 41, 1 unit per acre. We said 3 units per acre, and that's what the neighborhood voted for, and that's what we got. If you look at your, if I look at your reason for the comp plan, it is, that we're to develop a guide to community progress development, to take us from a rural county into an urbanized county. And that as, according to your reasoning here, it involves building the infrastructure, which we've done. We've widened 41, we've improved the high school, we redid Sanders Elementary, we built Heritage Park. Once those, that infrastructure needs have been met, your language, we must focus on maintaining quality of life, to protect rural neighborhoods, and to limit urban sprawl. And that's what we're asking you to do. We have a nice little neighborhood here. We have 40 residents on 28 acres. If you look at their project, it's L-shaped. On there, we'll call them 28 acres, the more north-south portion of it. That's where the majority of their townhomes are. So they're on their 28 acres and our 28 acres. We have 40. They want to put somewhere around 180. Do the math. It's not fair to us. If you look at the neighbors that are around us, we average 0.69 acres per household. That's not including all the people who live on Lake Thomas. That's only the people that take Little Lake Thomas Road and Thomas Circle. 0.69 acres, more than almost 3/4 of an acre. Taking Lake Thomas people that are going to be affected by this, it's well over an acre or 2 on average. So now we're going from an acre or 2 on average, or even 3/4 of an acre on average, to 0.16 acre per unit. That's a hefty change in land use. Now, we have some ROR, granted, minuscule compared to the entire project. We're not saying let's not build it. We're not saying, we're anti-growth. We're saying that it's too many units. They've met with us on several occasions. We have listened to them. Unfortunately, they haven't listened back. The preserves at Lake Thomas is the most recent development that would be similar, okay, in terms of the size, the scope, the location. They're on 1/3 acre lots. They're coming in 0.16 acre lots. The only thing around there that is more than 1/3 of an acre is Lake Bambi. That was established in 1975, prior to zoning.
Excuse me,
So-
sir,
I'm sorry?
your time is up, but
Okay.
why don't you just wrap up for me?
I just think it's too dense, too many units. You know, I granted that they have tried to appease some of the residents by, changing a buffer or doing this or that, but the fact is, 215 units on, 47 acres, do the math. They're just asking for too many units. And your own approach, your adoption, your charter says this can be done if there is a compelling need to change the land use. I haven't heard one compelling need to change the land use. It's Res 3, why are we changing?
Okay. Who's next? Who's next? You're not quick enough, sir.
Hi, my name is Kathy Eshelman. I live at 5419 Shell Road in Land O'Lakes. I've been a resident of the Lake Thomas area since 1990. I have 2 petitions with 99 signatures of folks that couldn't be here today that are in opposition of this, and I'm not sure who I need to give this to.
We have a motion to...
Move to receive and file.
Yeah. A motion to receive and file.
I'll second.
We have a second. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I hereby object to the rezoning of the proposed development of 218 townhomes to be built on Little Lake Thomas Road. This is a single-family community, and I object to the rezoning from Res 3 and ROR to Res 6 to allow for 218 townhomes. I would prefer that we keep the existing zoning and build single-family homes. I strongly object to the access to Lake Thomas. This is a private lake with 2 large developments, the preserve at Lake Thomas and Lake Thomas Point, which do not have access except for homes directly on the lake. Over the years, we have, as a community, opposed developments having access for the following reasons. It would negatively impact water quality, which is currently, it's beautiful. It would increase the hydrilla, which thanks to $10,275 in donations, Lake Thomas is currently hydrilla free. It is a private lake, and we as citizens have to take up collections to clear up the hydrilla. Also, another concern is boater safety. I would rather see you build single-family homes with those directly on the lake having access only, much like the 2 other developments that are currently there. This would eliminate 218 townhomes from having access. Okay.
Okay.
I strongly object to this rezoning, and I thank you for hearing my concerns.
Thank you very much. Did you express those concerns at a meeting with the proposed developer?
I'm sorry?
Did you have an opportunity to express those concerns about the
Yes.
lake access?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
All right. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Jeff Hossman. I live at 31251 Reed Road in Dade City, 33523. My wife and I also own a home on Thomas Circle. And many of the concerns of the community have been spoken here, and so I'm not going to harp on those, but we absolutely echo those sentiments that we are against the rezoning from R3 to R6 from a density issue. We are against public access to Lake Thomas, and we have concerns about the flooding that is occurring and what will happen if the development for townhomes is approved. The one other major issue that I'd like to bring up would be the back entrance to the community that's proposed on Little Lake Thomas Road, and the fact that even with some improvements to 41 recently, there is no deceleration lane to turn onto Little Lake Thomas Road from 41 when you're going south. So the need to decelerate from 45 miles an hour to make that right-hand turn going south is something that could potentially cause serious accidents if there is no improvements made for a deceleration lane, turn lane there. So that's a major issue that even if there is a development that's approved for single-family home residents, I do believe that's an improvement that the county needs to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I spoke a moment ago, but I would like your permission to submit.
Excuse me. You only can come up once.
May I submit a petition from the owners in the preserve
Yes.
at Lake Thomas?
Move to receive and file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, who's next?
Hi, my name is Ed Bly. I live at 21137 Little Lake Thomas Road. The application submitted by the applicant states that Little Lake Thomas Road is a two-lane road. This is false. The Cubulus Road, Regency Park, Hudson Avenue, Main Street, Grand Boulevard, these are all two-lane roads. Little Lake Thomas Road is not a two-lane road. The application also implies that 218 townhomes would be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. This also is not true. If you drive from US 41, the County Line Road in the north, all the way to the County Line Road in the south, with the exception of the Caliente Resort, there is nothing compatible with this higher density. You would have to go all the way to the apex of Florida and US 41 in Hillsborough County before you see such an increase in density. Please consider the precedent today that you all are going to be setting. Every medium-sized property in Land O'Lakes would then want a zoning change because they will get more bang for their buck. This decision will forever change all of Land O'Lakes, not just the Little Lake Thomas community. Please vote against this rezoning.
Thank you.
My name is Jane Smith. I live at 5353 School Road, Land O'Lakes. I'm asking for you not to approve the increase to R6 from R3. I've lived where I live since 1992. Rural community. I live right across the street from Heritage Park. I put up with the noise and everything else because of the lake. The lake is beautiful. We ski on the lake. We've had 2 generations already that skied on the lake coming up. I have a grandson that's going to be skiing on the lake. So with increased people, we also have increased people on the lake. Even though the developer has said there's no way they can get on the lake, there is. Kayaks with ski boats are not compatible. Also, I'm concerned with the runoff from 218 units, their cars, on the pavement. Yes, there are retention ponds, but we all know, we've pointed out that there's flooding on that end of the lake, and it will end up in the lake, which is, at this point, pristine, beautiful, safe to swim in, safe to ski in. So I'm asking that you hold it to the R3. That is what everybody that lives there now has abided by. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Okay, anybody else have something hopefully new to bring?
My name is Tammy Stiglman. I live at 20639 Lake Thomas Road, and I live on the south side of the lake. I'm against this also. I would like for it to stay R3. I have lived out on Lake Thomas for 24 years, so I would like to keep everyone on the lake who lives on the lake only to gain access. That is true. However, the flooding issue is really severe, and I've only started learning about this in December when we all started getting together. Because I live on the south side of the lake, how does that flooding affect us? Well, it has been affecting me greatly. because I have 9 acres on the opposite side of the lake. And on my property, I have a creek, and that creek goes behind my house. So now that the flooding in the lake drains to the south side of the lake, I wish I would have brought you pictures because I didn't realize this as much. The lake drains to the south, it goes behind my house, so I literally get flooded from the front side of my house. I had to put in a new seawall. Why? Because the waters of Lake Thomas are slowly increasing. They're getting higher and higher. So those of us on Lake Thomas on the south side, the water is ever so slowly coming over our seawalls. So what's going to happen when you allow this to be built? Where is that water going to go? Where's it going to go? Are you going to allow it in Lake Thomas? Are we going to get flooded out on the south side too? Are you going to maintain the quality? If you do allow it, who do we call when you've allowed it and the property damages to our home? Have you considered the wildlife, the deer, the eagles that live out there? Are you considering all of this? Because it's not just a Little Lake Thomas Road issue. It really is for Lake Thomas. It's affecting us terribly. We used to have a beach where I live. We used to be able to have white sand and a beach. I haven't had a beach in about 6 to 7 years. The water is always at my seawall. Why? Why don't we have beaches anymore? Is it because of the flooding at Little Lake Thomas that nobody's taking care of? Is that the answer? Do you know the answer? Because I hope you really consider this, and I hope you deny this. Please keep it at R3. Thank you. Also, I want to bring something to your attention. In this, it doesn't equal 41.78 acres. You asked early about the breakdown. It totals to 39.03 acres. It's not 41.78. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, was there anyone else that had anything to say before we bring the applicant back up to respond? I don't believe I see anyone.
Thank you, Planning Commission members. Barbara Wilhite again. We have our team here who would like to respond to some of those comments. Some things that, we've clearly pointed out that we don't have boat access. We'll go over, our planner will go over and explain to you not only that we're restricting it as a condition, but also how we practically restricting it. We're not having any access to Thomas Circle or Lake Thomas roads. Some of those things have changed since our initial plans, so I can understand perhaps the confusion. But my team consists of Alexis Crespo, Roy Mazur, and Steve Henry. Alexis is a land planner, and we'll talk to you about the issues that you've heard about compatibility and townhomes. They're single family to single family. Roy Mazur, it will talk about drainage. Even though we're at the comp plan stage, we have a team that has evaluated the property and knows about the property. And Steve Henry is our traffic engineer. Again, he's evaluated traffic. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alexis for her to talk to you about the changes that were made throughout the life of this project so far, as well as some of the planning issues. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. Thank you. As was said, my name is Alexis Crespo. I'm a certified land use planner with Waldrop Engineering, and we do have a PowerPoint presentation to walk you through the project and address a lot of the concerns we did hear today. What is before you is the comp plan amendment to transmit again, but we would like to dig into some of the details of the MPUD rezoning, as that really falls on a lot of the comments you heard. The site is just over 45 acres in size. While we are seeking the Res 6 future land use category, we are not seeking the maximum density through our companion rezone. We are only seeking 4.8 units per acre. And we'll show you how that lays out on the site to carefully address the compatibility and density concerns you heard today. Barbara's walked you through the lengthy process the applicant has undertaken, and we're still at the very early stages of this, but as was noted, we've met with the community on numerous occasions, withdrew the Euclidean rezone as we realized that the MPUD and the binding concept plan and the conditions are going to be very important for this project to be successful. This is an illustrative version of the MPUD concept plan that was submitted to your staff last week, so I'm kind of jumping right into the zoning details, if you will, but if you'll bear with me, we made many design concessions and laid this out in order to address the compatibility items you heard. So just to start with, I think I can point to this screen. Is there a way to point?
Yeah, the top circle is your pointer.
Okay.
Sometimes
It's not really going there, but you can see, I'll start with access. We have access to the site is from US 41. We did hear concerns about access to Little Lake Thomas Road. That is emergency only for first responders coming to the community. So this is not a back door for residents to be using. The access to the site will be from US 41. What really stands out, I think, when you look at the plan is how the units are clustered internally to the site to limit the building's impact on adjacent single-family residences. As staff has noted in their report, this is about transitioning land use from your commercial, your mobile home parks on Land O'Lakes, and transitioning to the lower density as you move west towards Lake Thomas and to those established single-family communities. So what we've done is we've pushed the units internally. We've limited those units to 2 stories in height and 4-unit townhomes only. We have maintained a 100-foot minimum separation from the preserve at Lake Thomas to our south and proposed buffers that are significant and will provide for screening of these units. In addition to just buffers and placement of the unit types, you'll note that we have located our preserve areas, our water management features, all of these things along the exterior of the site in order to, again, limit the impacts to our residential neighbors and get everything internal here. The dark green, I wish I could point, but it's just directly below the mobile home park text. That's our amenity facility. This will be a privately maintained, HOA-controlled, single-family lot ownership community. So townhomes, you do own the lot underneath. This is not a multifamily product. And that amenity site that will be maintained by the HOA is located adjacent to the the Bambi Park in order to mitigate any impacts of that against the single-family communities. The other main thing we heard about a lot during the community meetings and is reflected in the MPUD we submitted is the Lake Thomas access and interface. What is conditioned in this zoning is no boat access to the lake from this project. So we're actually reducing impact on the lake because there are some existing docks associated with the property. This will have a passive boardwalk for residents, but no motorized or non-motorized boats will be able to access the lake from this project, and that will come again before you with the zoning to address that concern. We also limited any units close to the lake to provide for water quality and other things you'll hear about from the rest of the project team. This is a comprehensive plan amendment, so I do want to put testimony on the record that we are in agreement with your staff, that this is consistent with the current comprehensive plan and the vision to infill in your areas with appropriate infrastructure where you have water, sewer, schools, and roadways. This is where you want to accommodate the population growth over the long-range planning horizon. It needs to be done in a way that's sensitive to surrounding neighborhoods, but this is certainly in line with the comprehensive plan's vision for the central market area. We've demonstrated through the application that infrastructure is available to support the project. This is just a closer look at how we've laid out the site in relation to the lake, and just showing the frontage of this property as well as the separation between our proposed facilities and adjacent docks there. We want to note that this project does have direct access to a 6-lane arterial roadway, again providing transition away from the arterial to the single-family uses further to the west, but certainly based upon that roadway frontage, the proposed density can be accommodated and is appropriate. In terms of compatible development patterns, I just want to touch on the fact that this is, again, townhomes, fee simple, where the property owners will own their lots. In order to meet the test of compatibility as you have it set forth in your comprehensive plan, it doesn't mean that single family must be adjacent to single family. Certainly, we want to look at what's existing in the neighborhood and propose dwelling types that can be compatible with that and will not interfere in terms of noise, light, etc. So the proposed townhome will be 2 stories in height. It will function very similarly to single family, been clustered into the site through the sensitive site design, well buffered. and is much less dense than a multifamily product or condominium or apartment style of home. In addition to what's being proposed by the applicant in terms of opaque walls, buffers around the property line in the development program, we wanted to note, if you have not visited the site, that there are existing dense buffers along the shared roadways with our neighbors. And then the last item I'll touch on is just how, again, townhomes can coexist with single-family homes. Some of the most beautiful planned, master plan communities within Pasco County regularly incorporate housing diversity within their communities. This is what makes a healthy community, as referenced in staff's report. Allowing for both single-family and townhomes is common. Those are certainly built communities master planned with those units in mind at the outset. There are other examples throughout Pasco County where you have townhomes interfacing with single-family homes, and it's done so by sensibly designing where your lakes and where your preserves go, where water management features go, to provide separation between those differing product types. But these can coexist and, again, provide for diversity of housing styles within the community. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Henry to talk about traffic.
Before we do that, do we have any questions?
You said he's going to, excuse me, he's going to address traffic?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
And we're at 3 minutes, 30 seconds.
Good afternoon. Steve Henry, Links & Associates, 5023 West Laurel, Tampa 33607. So I want to address a couple of the traffic comments that had come up. One was the density and the effect on traffic. What this graphic shows is today the property has land use of R3, which would allow about 91 single-family homes. We're proposing 218 townhomes. So the graphic on the the left shows the trip generation for single-family during the PM peak hour, which is about 93 trip ends. The townhomes would generate about 118. That's an increase of about 25 trips is what we would see in PM peak hour for the townhomes. I'm not sure if I can do. And this equates to about less than 0.5% of the level of service D capacity of US 41. So the net traffic impact on this project would be insignificant. In addition to that, as we had said, we're providing a right-in.
Wait a minute, Steve, please. I'm going to ask you, please, to be quiet. I had them be quiet while you were up here to speak. Please show them the same courtesy. They have just as many rights here as you do. All right? I appreciate that.
We are proposing to put a right turn lane into the driveway on US 41. It will meet all the DOT criteria for the length of that turn lane. In fact, we have met with the Florida Department of Transportation on this access, and they have indicated that it is acceptable and meets the spacing criteria, and they have no issue with the right-in, right-out for that driveway. In addition,
Steve, let me just ask you, are you providing a decel lane there?
Yes, it'll be a right turn lane to meet all DOT criteria for US.
All right, thank you.
In addition,
Just to say something, but it's not the Little Lake Thomas Road like the gentleman asked for.
Absolutely correct.
Right,
Correct.
okay.
We had, right, because we don't have access to that road, we're not proposing to provide that right turn lane there.
So from the corner, I can't remember the name of the street there. I was driving there yesterday for quite a while, but how long or how big is the distance from the nearest corner to the entry?
From the
Little Lake Thomas, is that what you're talking about?
Well, where you're going to put your entry.
the entry, the next driveway to the north.
Can you show the plat up there again?
It is approximately about 400 feet, 400 to 500 feet.
So Steve, the entrance is not Lake Bambi Circle?
No, it is south of that, yes, correct.
Denise, can you put the site plan 1 second?
Yeah, we can go back to the site plan here, if I can go backwards.
This is a little hard to see it here.
Yeah, agreed.
And I know this pointer doesn't work. Okay, so, but if you look at where if you start on northern property line on 41, Just to the south of that is where that little lake at Bambi is. And you can see where our driveway is much further south than that.
Okay.
And again, what we would provide is a right turn lane to meet all the DOT criteria.
What about a left turn lane?
We'll only have right in, right out access. So we would have to make a U-turn at the median opening to the north, and then a U-turn, if we want to go north, U-turn at US 41 in Erin.
And you don't consider that a safety issue?
No, and actually DOT encourages.
Right turn, right out, I know, but.
No, they encourage U-turns. That's why they have access management, and they have designed the roadways in their view that the U-turns are a safe movement on the state highways. And that has been documented by DOT in studies. And I'm happy to, I don't have it here, but I'm happy to bring it when we do the MPUD. But there have been documented studies by the federal government that have also looked at U-turns and have determined that they are a safe movement on roadways and actually encourage those movements. And I'm happy to provide that data to you. In addition, one of the issues came up was the U-turns at US 41 and Erin Cutoff. We have actually looked at the accident data for the last 5 years at that intersection. There have only been about 5 accidents involving left turns over a 5-year period, which is, in the grand scheme of things, an insignificant number of accidents for the volume of traffic at that intersection. One of the things that we can look at and willing to look at as part of this development is right now the southbound left turn is actually a protected permissive, meaning you can go when the northbound traffic is going. We're glad to look at that with DOT to make that a protected. That way all the left turns are on a protected phase. They don't have the ability to turn when there's through traffic going. That would also help from that standpoint. That concludes my presentation, unless you've got any questions.
Denise, can you put that image up, this image on the screen from the presentation?
Here. Oops.
I think it's the other way. That
So
way.
I'm trying to understand the left hand that's in the northbound lane there. Where is that in relation to the entrance to?
That is north of our entrance.
Okay. How many? Any idea of how many feet? Or,
It's probably about 500 to 600 feet.
okay. So the entrance to the community directly is actually is off this image. It's further to the south, essentially.
Yes, it's probably in that general area. It's hard to tell from this picture, but generally in that area.
Okay, I want to go back to that same question that if you don't mind.
Yes,
You
sir.
see the red vehicle there? You see a left turn lane there?
Yes, correct.
Where would the entrance to your property?
The entrance, again, it's hard to tell from exactly where this is, but generally speaking, it would probably be on the southern portion of this picture that you see.
Okay, I'm going to assume that's going in the direction of the vehicle that's red. You can see the red vehicle there, I'm assuming.
That red vehicle is going northbound.
Okay.
So our entrance would be on the left-hand side.
Southbound.
Southbound.
So what I'm trying to do is figure out about where it's going to be at. So it's in the area of that SUV there?
It's probably that area, maybe a little further south.
Thank you, I appreciate
Sure.
that.
Any other questions?
Who answers the flooding and drainage questions? I'm sure we have a few questions about that.
Wrong way.
You thought you were going to get away with not doing anything, right?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Roy Major. I'm a professional engineer with WRA Engineering. My firm is working with the project team for the civil site and stormwater design. The slide you're looking at details many of the significant state water management district and local Pasco County rules which govern stormwater infrastructure design and permitting. I would draw to your attention to those top 5 bullet points, which come from the Florida Administrative Code. Will not cause adverse water quantity impacts to receiving waters and adjacent lands. Will not cause adverse flooding to on-site or off-site property. The bottom one, will not adversely affect the water quality of receiving waters. I mean, these are essentially encapsulated. You know, the state, again, water management district and local rules that our design will be reviewed by. The project will be reviewed and designed by licensed under the direct care of a licensed professional engineer at my firm, and it will conform to all of these rules. There was a concern discussed about water quality in Lake Thomas. And just pointing again, our design will have to factor the water quality nutrient loading going into Lake Thomas. And that will be reviewed by the Water Management District.
So are you saying that you're not going, you have to prevent any additional drainage from going into Lake Thomas? Is that what you're telling me?
What I'm saying is the water quality coming off our site, going into Lake Thomas, is part of the design.
So you'll clean it up, is that what you're saying?
Well, if there's anything to be cleaned up, yes, yes. And so that is, and our design is reviewed by the Water Management District for water quality. Also, in terms of quantity of discharge, our design, we calculate the amount of runoff in the existing condition. Our discharge in the developed condition cannot exceed that in the existing. And so even though a lot of the site will be impervious, there'll be concrete, asphalt, buildings, our discharge in the developed condition cannot exceed the discharge of the existing condition. And that's why the ponds are there. The ponds receive the water, you know, they attenuate the flow, and then it's released to the receiving waters. And so all that is part of our design. Again, it is reviewed by the Water Management District and Pasco County. What you're looking at in this slide is kind of maybe a before or after type slide. On the left side, based on the elevational survey of the site, what we're showing here is the area on our site that contributes land to Little Lake Thomas and Thomas Circle. In the community meetings, it was brought out, and clearly in this meeting, there's concern over flooding on those two roadways. And so what we've shown, again, this is based on real-time survey, this is the amount of land on the subject property that sends flow towards those roadways during a rainfall event. In the proposed condition, the developer has instructed us to take all of that flow into our site. And so thereby, there will be no contributing area from that site onto the two existing roadways. So again, the primary point of this slide is the stormwater management system of the project, you know, will improve the standing water and flooding condition on those two roadways once the project is constructed.
Do you have any data that would show what's going into the lake right now? I see, I mean, you have the proposed, it's showing the tip of the lake, but I'm curious to see what currently is going into the lake. Because some of the letters of opposition, there was one there that showed a lot of pictures and showed and talked about drainage coming off this property and what it was currently doing. And the concern, of course, is that it would enhance that or make it worse.
I don't have that number in front of me, the actual flow number or the volumetric quantity of what's going into the lake off the property now. However, I can say, kind of per my other point, was that that quantity going into Lake Thomas, once this project is constructed, it cannot exceed what goes into the lake in the existing condition.
Okay. Okay, what other questions do we have up
I
here?
have a question for Barbara.
Go ahead. Barbara?
Barbara? Barbara, this site plan has more detail than a normal MPD plan does. And I realize the MPD is not before us, but when it does come before us, are you proposing that that exact plan be adopted with the MPD?
I have not discussed that with my client, but I know when we did Quail Hollow golf course conversion, there was a concern about a lot of these similar concerns, and we found a way to tie a plan, concept plan, and with some requirements on it to the MPUD. So whatever it takes to document the commitments, we're willing to do that, and we can provide a plan. We have before provided a plan that relates to the conditions. So we will make sure that the county staff is satisfied, the attorney's office is satisfied that we are documenting our conditions in the most enforceable way possible. So, like, for example...
So is your answer yes? That
Well, I can't tell you because I haven't talked to my client about this particular plan, but I can tell you that we have in MPUDs attached plans to them where we make a strong commitment that that's where the pond will be. We haven't done those conditions yet, so I can't tell you that exactly how the plan that we would attach looks, but I'm telling you that there is a way to attach a plan to set forth the commitments that we're making. Whether it'll be that exact plan, I don't know, but we have no problem attaching a plan that enforces those commitments. But we're a couple steps ahead of ourselves.
So you are, what I'm hearing is you're willing to have an enforceable detailed plan be part of the MPD. You're just not sure if that's going to be the one.
Right, it depends on what detail it has on it. Is it the ponds? Is it the access points? Our MPD already has the access points.
Well, can we go back to
our
this slide?
MPD's
There is a slide that
got
has
buffers and lake
the
access
actual
on it.
plan. Can we put that up?
The concept plan?
That one.
Yep.
There.
There you go.
So I guess that's my question is that there was a representation by your planner that this was designed in a way that it would kind of transition from the more intense uses to the east, to the lower density to the west, and that it was sort of clustered in the middle of the site with the ponds and parks and buffering on the outside. So it appears to me that your planner is representing that this is effectively the plan. So if you're asking the planning commission to approve this and or the MPD based on this plan, that's what I'm asking is, is it going to be, because most MPDs we approve don't have this level of detail on a plan.
Understand.
And you know that. So that's what I'm asking is, are you committing to some version of a detailed plan?
Yes.
That looks something like this?
Yes, I think I'll make sure my client, oh, there he is there. Hold on a second.
You can't, the MPD's not before you, you can say that you'll only vote for the MPD, you can make that change. You can do that, yes. As they said, there's no 4 points. You can say, when the MPD comes before you, you don't want to be in favor of it, then you can just change. That's up to you.
So the answer is that where we have the conditions, we have a condition, for example, that says along the south with Thomas Lake Preserve at Lake Thomas, we're going to have ponds. We know we can have a plan that'll say that. So the things that are in those 13 commitments can be on a plan. Whether our road exactly goes this way and whether we have the exact layout of the lots that way, I mean, the plan would not have those lots on there. But as it relates to those conditions, our MPUD plan, other than ponds, has all the commitments on there. It's got the extra buffers, it's got the setback, it's got the boardwalk detail, it's got the access, it's got the limited emergency access on Little Lake Thomas Road. So it has all of those elements to tie to those commitments. So,
So what I'm hearing you say is you're not agreeing that it would be a detailed plan?
it'll be a detailed plan, but not that one.
Okay. answers my question.
Okay.
But again, you get to bring that back to you, you'll see it.
So we will actually have a opportunity to approve or disapprove it, but it's not today.
That's correct. You're asking me to fast forward to the Planning Commission hearing where you'll see what we come up with, and I think you'll be satisfied
And the
that
only reason
we're
I'm
making those
asking this
commitments.
question is because of the representation your planner made, which normally would not be, I mean, you can do that somewhat by words, but it's somewhat difficult without an actual plan.
Right, and she was talking about the MPUD. I mean, she had both presentations. She talked about the comp plan, which we're here to talk about today, but she knew that there was a lot of interest in what we're going to do with our plan. So we will come back with you. We understand the concern, and I went through this at Quail Hollow. Nobody likes us to say things and then not do them. I mean, I get that, and that's not our intent. So we will come back with something that I think you'll find satisfactory to tie our conditions to a plan and to make sure that the commitments that we're talking about and what our planner's gone over actually happens.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The narrative that you handed out,
Yes.
are we committing to that? Because the following additional conditions for approval are proposed.
Correct.
So these are, you're agreeing to that the
That is correct.
buffering
That's
and
correct.
access is not on Little Lake Thomas Road.
That's correct.
There's going to be no boat access onto the lake of any kind.
That's correct.
I mean, it seems to me like that these conditions address a ton of the concerns of the residents that I've read from and heard today.
Correct. And we, not only, I wrote in that narrative, I've given staff draft conditions that are conditions of approval that have those same commitments in it. Now staff will look at those and say, well, maybe that's not clear enough. I try to write everything really clearly. I don't write anything vague so that we can argue about it later. I write it really clearly what those things are. But I've already submitted those to staff so they can start looking at those, again, to show the commitment. I know it's important. What we say we're going to do, we need to make sure our conditions reflect that. And I don't think having a plan that also goes with those conditions is not a bad idea, and we'll make sure that we work with staff on that, as we did before in Quail Hollow. I would just point out that the boardwalk concept was put in place. I didn't know if this came out enough to you, but the boardwalk concept was put in place as a means of enforcing what we say, which is no motorized or unmotorized boat access to Lake Thomas. The question always comes up, well, how do you do that? How are you going to make sure? So the boardwalk concept, and it was a similar concept that in Booker Creek Preserve in Pinellas County, where I used to go as a child, they didn't want us in Lake Tarpon, so they put a boardwalk in the way, and we couldn't have access to Lake Tarpon. So it's a similar, and it was actually a resident's idea to do that, and that's where the boardwalk concept has come in, to actually provide that barrier so that you can't get a boat in there, you can't get a ski boat, and you can't get kayaks, and you can't get paddle boards. And so that's the extra layer of why we're doing that. The amenity was moved away from the lake. I think the other thing you have to think about is, what is a townhome community? It's single family to single family, but it's single family attached. That's because some people don't want to take care of a yard. Now, what's the benefit of a townhome community? It's common. It's common architecture, common painting, common maintenance, common landscaping, maintained all at the same time. The amenity, instead of everybody having pools in their backyards, is amenitized, so they go to the amenity center, which we moved away from the residents. So the townhome itself creates a compatibility because of that uniqueness. And you're not talking about renters. We're not talking about, I know people say renters, those people. We're talking about a single-family owner, just like the single-family owners that live out there today. They want to enjoy not having to take care of their yards, not have to paint their properties, not have to worry about the roofs. And so all those things are done commonly. And they're going to enjoy the amenity as opposed to in their backyards, they'll enjoy the amenity that's common. So I just wanted you to think about the difference and how that does create compatibility as you transition. I think staff has done a very good job of explaining the comp plan, as well as our expert of explaining the comp plan, the consistency of the vision. And I do want to do a couple housekeeping items. I always forget. We have a PowerPoint that was handed to you all, 2 letters of support. Would ask that you receive and file those if you would, because the clerk will want to know.
We have a motion
I'll
to receive
second.
and file and a second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also gave to the clerk, because I sent to each of you yesterday, an email with 2 attachments, being the MPUD narrative that was already on file with the county in a public record, and the concept plan that we've talked about today that's on file and has been sent to everybody on our emails. I wanted to make sure that that became a part of the record, so it wasn't something I sent to you that wasn't made part of the record. So I'd ask if you'd receive and file that as well.
Moved to receive and file.
Just a question. What you're referring to, Michael, the conditions of approval, has that all that information been shared with the residents?
Yes, it has been shared.
Because there were a lot of questions that came up that would lead me to believe that they weren't available, or that at least they didn't read them.
So it came to us yesterday.
Yeah.
Right.
So is that when it went to them?
I'd have to check with, the client has been communicating with the residents and sending them information and meeting with them. None of those 13 things is, he's talked about all those things with the residents at the last neighborhood meeting. Nothing's been new past that neighborhood meeting. So we'll make sure if the MPD narrative hasn't gone to everybody on that email chain that it does.
Well, might help solve some of the problems at least, because if things like lake access are addressed, that solves one problem. And I'm sure there are a number of things on there that we talked about today. And I think the thing is that today we're here to decide on the number of units that we want to approve on that site, not this site. This site is a representative site that may be changed. The truth is that the property, when they do develop it, they're going to have to retain their water on their own site. It's going to drain like it normally drains, but they can't have more drainage onto the accompanying site property than already exists. And if it does, it can't go out as dirty water. So what you're seeing here is not, it's a representation, but it's not the final product. So we're here really to talk about the number of units that we want to allow on the site. And this, I think somebody said, this, if you actually calculate this equates to about 4.6 units per site, not 6 units.
Right, 4.8.
4.8 units per site.
Mr. Chair, you have a pending motion to receive and file. You need to act on.
Sorry, I thought we did that.
I'll second that.
Okay.
The second one.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
We did the
Okay.
first one, not the second one.
So, I think that's really the question before us, is if we want to approve this number of units, the R6, or do we think something else is more appropriate? So, excuse me, sir. Sir, please, sit down. Okay? We're trying to get answers for you. All right? So just have a seat, cool your jets. All right? So, I don't know how you feel about it. I'd entertain a motion, but, personally, I think maybe your R6 is a little bit too intense. I think everybody but that one man that spoke just recently clapped.
You don't want to get shot either, huh?
Yeah, right.
The only thing I would
Anyway.
add to that is that the max, that's a max. We get to set the density in the MPUD. You can set the density and say, we don't like 218. But we only have 3 and 6. We don't have a 4. We're actually missing a 4 in the Pasco County Comp Plan. Something that
Yeah, we used
talked
to have
about
a
the
4,
plan-
didn't
We've
we?
been talking about the planning staff, we're missing a 4.
Yeah.
We really need a 4, but in the end of the day, we have 3 and 6. But the ultimate density is what you feel comfortable when we come in with the MPUD. So if we had a 4, we'd do a 4. But we don't have a 4 in Pasco.
Do you all understand what you just said?
No.
Okay. Well, we have 2 options. We have the R3, which it already is, and we have the R6. We don't have an R5 or an R4, so we can't approve an R4 because it doesn't exist. So what happens is that when they come back with their MPUD and make their presentation, it's at that time that we can really more restrict the number of units. Am I right, David?
Yes, I mean, the only thing that both of you are kind of missing is we do have PD that has been used in the past. So the PD has flexibility. You can set the density at whatever you want to set it at.
Okay.
So I don't think it's accurate to say that the only options are.
All right, good.
Are R3 and R6. There is PD.
And just to, this is Terry Pitos, Planning and Development, just
Okay,
to
Terry.
follow up on David's comments. The PD would require a mix of uses. So it would mean an intensification of the, while you could control the density through the PD, it would mean a certain intensification of the property through the use of a PD. But as you've both noted, the Res 6 is the vehicle or the mechanism to attain densities over Res 3. So that would include the 4.8 that Ms. Wilhite is referring to. And it is the case that through the MPUD, you could cap that density precisely to the desired density, which would be the 4.8 that Ms. Wilhite has indicated.
Or less.
Or
Right.
less, correct.
All right. Okay.
I would also note, if I could, Mr. Chairman, with regard to some of the rationale related to why Res 6 would be appropriate for this location, in addition to the fact that it being the mechanism for the additional density above Res 3, is the fact that Tower Road is just to the north of this particular property, and it is a vision road and a future road that will eventually intersect with US 41. And that vision road will essentially stretch from Starkey Boulevard on the west end all the way, in some instances, beyond I-75 on the east end. So it is a cross-county road that will be moving through this area. And so that intersection there at Tower and US 41 is going to be a fairly trafficked intersection that will provide the east-west and also north-south connectivity that currently is lacking for this segment of US 41. A lot of the traffic that's occurring along that stretch of 41 is happening because they're trying to get to 52 or to 54. But with the addition of Tower Road and eventually the addition of Ridge Road also, that should alleviate those regional traffic circulation issues that are currently being experienced. That said, like I said, this is going to be an intense intersection. That means those ROR districts that are along US 41 that were appearing on the future land use map earlier are likely to see an intensification of land uses and redevelopment themselves. So this Res 6 represents a step down from those ROR intensities that are future and inbound. The preliminary plans right now in terms of the long-range transportation plan, they're indicating that the connection to US 41 for Tower Road is to happen sometime between 2031 and 2035. The CIP does indicate that route studies are taking place for that segment right now, fiscal 19 and fiscal 20. And also the Bexley-Sun Lake segment, which is further to the west, is likely to happen in 2026, 2030. So the march of Tower Road to 41 is taking place.
Terry, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So is the reason that this came to the Planning Commission before the MPUD came to the Planning Commission because this has to be transmitted?
Correct.
And so the board, when it gets to the board will approve them at the same time, the MPUD and the plan amendment?
That is the applicant's request, so we will slow down the adoption hearing so that MPUD will come together.
I just want, because there's so many representations that are being made today based on the MPUD, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page that the board will approve them at the same time. The board won't approve this Res 6 without the companion MPUD that limits the density. Is that what I'm hearing from both of you?
I understand the question. As I understand the scheduling currently, the MPUD dates have not been set for the MPUD, but there is time in the transmittal process to line those up or line the comprehensive plan amendment up with the MPUD.
So what I'm hearing, okay, I'll ask Barbara then. So you're not seeking approval of Res 6 without an MPUD at the same time?
That's correct. And we'll do what we need to do to the schedule to make sure that's the case. We're just asking that you transmit and the board transmit so it can start the process. We can work on the MPUD, we can come back and work with you all, and ultimately, they'll be adopted on the same date. They'll probably hold one public hearing on both of them. We will make sure that that's the way it's handled, no matter what it takes with staff, in the scheduling to make that happen. We don't think it should be that the boards are asked to adopt but they don't have the MPUD with it with all those commitments.
Okay, so this is our mechanism for controlling the amount of density we have on the site, and they'll have to come back to us and at a later date with a plan that we can improve or modify as we see necessary.
Will you control the density through this approval and the MPUD approval? But if your question is, where can you limit them to a specific number of units, it would be in the MPUD.
Yeah, what I didn't want is for the residents to go away thinking that if this was approved, that now they're going to just build 6 units per acre, because that's not going to happen. Am I correct?
And that's why I asked the question whether they were seeking approval of Res 6 independent of the MPD, and it sounds, what I'm hearing from the applicant is, no, they will have to travel together when it gets to the board.
Okay, who else has questions?
I had a question. Denise, could you go back to the comp plan map, the future land use map? I mean, I guess it's not so much of a question, it's a comment. It's just that area, it's Res 3. So that's the future land use. I think someone mentioned that at some point it would set a precedent to start changing these future land uses. And anywhere that there was open area around the county, you can change it, get a land use amendment. So I think that it's, I was a planner with the county, I'm a planner with the school district now. This is the future land use, and I think there should be some sort of surety that people that, if there's a land nearby, they should be sure that the land use is Res 3, and it would stay that way. And if we do change it, it is going to set a precedent, in my opinion.
I guess I'll chime in here, and anytime you get in, and again, I'm not a planner. I am an engineer, but I'm not a planner. But everything that I hear in planning language today is the importance of transitioning from commercial higher intensity uses to lower intensity uses. It's my opinion that what I've heard today is that what's proposed for the land use change is that transition. A lot of the concerns, a lot of and honestly, valid concerns, but there's agencies out there that have been created, and their main intent and their main focus is to address the concerns that we heard today, the water quality, the flooding, the traffic. All of those things will be addressed as these people go through their extensive reviews that they're forced to go through to get something like this approved. This is the first step in a long process. I'm sure the developer could stand up today and he would probably cry the blues about how long it's going to take him until he can put anything in the ground. So I mean, it's my opinion that we're going to get a shot at densities again with the MPUD. There's a lot of things that aren't formalized with this land use amendment that's here, but I think we have to move forward. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion?
Just under discussion, I will say that I've read everything in the file regarding this, and even went out there and spent a considerable amount of time out there yesterday and looked at it. And it's a difficult piece of property. And it is a piece of property. If you go to PD, you're going to have uses on there that you would really not want to have more so than what is being proposed here today. And the question before us today is whether or not we feel this is consistent with the comp plan. And I think the answer to that question is yes. we will have an opportunity to further control what actually gets built there. But that's not today.
Mr. Chairman, if I could make one comment. I live right up the road from this proposed development, and I echo and I understand the concerns regarding the traffic in the area. It's more of a comment for the applicant than anything else, but to encourage them to look at putting the entrance road as I know what we're looking at is just a representation, but if we can keep that entrance road as far south on the development as possible. Traffic coming around that corner is terrible. People speed, it's like a racetrack there. I drive it every day. I see it, and that was kind of the intent of my focus on the left lane in too. But right out, right in is the answer for that, definitely. I just encourage you to move that road as far south.
Okay. Pete, anybody?
I have echo the same concerns, is that to me, it's like, it's already R3. You know, it's already R3, and it appears to me that we're just going to move something and call it spot zoning. I've heard that term before, and I have a hard time with it. I tend to agree with the chairperson that this is not the location for this type of project. And what are we really? So that's how I feel about it.
I don't want anybody to misunderstand my thinking on it. My thinking is that we need a method that we can control the ultimate density. And evidently, what I'm being told is that the only way we can control it is two ways: is just don't approve it, or approve it subject to reviewing any plan that goes in the future. That's the only way we'll have ultimate control, because at some point, somebody's going to come in here and develop that property, and it's going to be, we have to go through the same arguments all over again. It's probably many of the same arguments that took place when most of you moved out there, because probably people that were already there didn't want you there. And so that's something we always have to face. And so I just want to make sure that my thinking on it's clear. If I support it, it's not because I'm supporting R6. It's because I want a way to control the number of units that are there. Anything else? Gart? Anything?
I just need to know what we're voting on, please. I need clarification.
You have a motion for approval and a second right now.
We have a motion and a second to approve it. Okay, so all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
Okay.
Does the clerk need a roll call, or do you know the number?
Jamie Girardi,
Aye.
Michael Cox,
Aye.
Peter Hansel,
No.
George Lozada,
Aye.
Christopher Poole,
Aye.
Chris Williams, represented by Richard Canales,
Nay.
He only votes
Thomas
that time.
Beltray.
Nay.
No, it's an increase in residential use.
Oh, that's right.
So what did we just approve? We approved it with contingencies, or come back again next month?
Yeah, what we just approved, so make sure everybody understands, what we just approved was the application that we just received was just approved. But it was approved with the understanding that they're going to have to come back again. We'll have another meeting like this with a plan that everybody will have a chance to look at and say, okay, that plan either looks good, or we don't like that plan, we want to change that plan, we want to limit the number of units on that plan. It's not just strictly an R6 deal, so.
We didn't change it from R3 to R6.
But we approved R6, but it's subject to us reviewing the actual development.
To be clear,
Recommended approval.
this body is a recommending body to the Board of County Commissioners, so they don't
Recommendation.
technically approve anything. The Board of County Commissioners would make the final decision to approve this project.
But you sat there and listened to the guy lie about the traffic. He said there's 118 units.
Sir, as I just said, there's another hearing before the Board of County Commissioners where you can express all the concerns you heard today at the Planning Commission meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You got Richard over here. Chuck?
Are we going to the next item on the agenda?
Yeah. Okay.
He said 118, he said 118, should not 218. 93 residential is 218.
We're going to have more meetings. We're going to have more meetings. Just give it some time.
I guess we'll wait a
Okay.
couple of minutes so
Yeah.
folks can.
Yeah. Well, now that we're all in a good mood.
We're not even done.
We need
We're not even done. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's still another item on the agenda, so those who were here for P8, if you'd like to stick around, perfect. Just if you would limit the noise so I can present the last item, please. Thank you.
Okay, I'll ask for quiet as a courtesy. We're making a presentation here for the next applicant.
Okay, following item on your agenda, and the last item on your agenda today is item P9, which is PDD 207455. It's for a home occupation for a tattoo parlor in an ER estate residential district for the Dana Family Trust. The item is looking, proposed use is located in northwest Pasco County on the northeast corner of the intersection of Sherman Drive and Hollyhock Drive. It's for a home occupation for tattoo parlor. The site contains a single-family residence and a detached wood frame garage, and the owner applicant is proposing to operate a tattoo parlor by appointment or only with a maximum number of 8 clients per month. This item is coming to you today, as you may already know. Minor home occupations are considered accessory uses in all zoning districts, which include the ER Estate Residential District. The reason why this is coming to you today is because there's trip generation associated with the minor home occupation, and for that purpose, it requires a special exception. The Planning Commission has approved another similar special exception in this subdivision located approximately 250 feet southwest of the subject request on June 13th of 2001. Again, I could probably now point. So this is another special exception that you've approved in that subdivision. That one was for a real estate office. And the subject, it's the Rolling Oaks subdivision, which is all ER estate residential single-family homes, potential density 1 dwelling per acre. Future land use surrounding it is Res 1, 1 dwelling unit per acre. This is the access to the property from Hollyhock Drive and Sherman Drive. And the Planning and Development Department is recommending approval with conditions. The conditions, which are included in your packet, include that the special exception is limited to a home occupation for a tattoo parlor by appointment only. Days and hours of operation are limited to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday through Saturday. The owners have to comply with the following requirements in 530.21, which is that the special exception is limited to the owners and it does not run with the land. If the property is transferred or sold, the special exception becomes null and void. The use shall not occupy more than 25% of the total floor area of the dwelling unit. No outside display, storage, or use of the land is permitted for the home occupation. Business-related visits shall be by appointment only and shall be limited to 1 customer at a given time. Where applicable and where on-site parking is available, an additional person in waiting is permitted. This is directly from the Land Development Code. The use is clearly incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling. No change in the outside appearance of the building or premises as a result of the home occupation. Exterior signs that are visible from the street are prohibited, and there, in no case shall there be more than 14 total daily trips, including those associated with primary residential use upon the establishment of the home occupation. Additionally, the property may be subject to deed restrictions, which are more restrictive than county regulations. The owner's applicants assume the responsibility for compliance with the applicable deed restrictions. Because this item is something that is regulated at the state level, the owner's applicant shall comply with all state licensure and operational requirements for tattoo establishments and tattoo artists as applicable, contained in Section 381.00771-381.00 or through 381.00791 Florida statutes and Chapter 64E-28 Florida Administrative Code, as may be amended from time to time. The following condition is regarding revocation, so staff can initiate enforcement for violations of the conditions of approval by any methods available in the Land Development Code, Section 108, or through the revocation of the special exception pursuant to 402.4. And this is the acknowledgement portion, which is a standard condition as well. And I'm going to leave the criteria, and I'll move through it throughout the presentation. And again, the Planning and Development Department is recommending approval with conditions. I know the applicant is here to speak on the item, and there are folks, as you have noted, in opposition. I have included all the letters of objection that were received as of the 13th of January, and those are over 40 letters of objection from the Rolling Oaks Estates residents. Those were attachment 3 on your SIRE packet. And at that point, on January 13th, we had received 7 letters of support from Rolling Oaks Estates residents, and that's your attachment 4 in your SIRE packet. Any questions? Here to answer those.
Okay, any questions?
That was out of a total of 86.
Pardon me?
Ma'am, you're going to have to wait till your opportunity to speak at the podium, please.
Yeah. Is the applicant present? Just come up and give your name and your address, please.
Carrie Felice from the Hogan Law Firm, 11031 Spring Hill Drive, Spring Hill, Florida, on behalf of the applicant. We had 3 documents we wanted to request you receive and admit to the record: written statements from both applicants and a revised letter of support.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then this is the applicant. She's going to make a statement.
Okay.
Hello, Commissioner, staff, and neighbors. My name is Sarah Lee Dana. I live at 12620 Sherman Drive. One of my latest tattoo trade magazines writes, "There was a time when the stereotype of only bikers and sailors and jailbirds getting inked was pretty true. But those days are well in the past." One recent survey found that contrary to popular belief, more women, 40%, than men, 36%, have tattoos. 30% of young people aged 14 to 29 have a tattoo, compared to 45% of people aged 30 to 49, and 28% of people over 50. I have been tattooing around the world since 1982. In 1993, I opened a home-based tattoo shop in an unincorporated area in Santa Cruz, California, which was registered, licensed, and insured. I worked closely with the Santa Cruz County Health Department and a grand jury to develop the best safe practices to comply with California state law AB 186 by Assemblywoman Valerie K. Brown. I also underwent bloodborne pathogen training yearly. My husband and I moved to Hudson 1.5 years ago to live near our daughter and provide care and housing for our 3-year-old granddaughter and her disabled parents. We bought our home on 2¼ acres to provide for these needs, and also because it had a second driveway and a garage previously used as a beauty parlor called Kiva Unisex Salon. It has also been used as a lawnmower repair shop, an air conditioning repair service. Mail-in customers from these businesses still show up at my home occasionally. In my career, I have tattooed all members of my community: teachers, nurses, judges, vets, mommies, pro athletes, firefighters, daddies, grandparents, and even a widow and 3 Mountain View police officers whose cop brother had died. It has been my honor to work on all of these people. I am almost 60 years old, and I have had other jobs such as machinist for 5 years, student aide for severely disabled kids for 15 years, and a tattooist for 38 years. Also, I was a notary for 4 years. I still enjoy being an artist and meeting people through tattooing. Is there really a difference in my neighborhood whether I do a portrait of a person or on a person? Thank you for considering my proposal for a quiet and home-based tattoo art studio by appointment only with no employees and restricted traffic. There are comments made about my tattoo studio in our neighborhood bringing down property values, and while there is no data that I am aware of to support this notion, in the 21 years of my last home business, our property value increased by $500,000, along with other properties in the neighborhood. Now, to address your fears and concerns, in Pasco County, it is perfectly legal to operate a home business in a residential neighborhood. I am not asking for a variance, an exemption, or rezoning. Plenty of businesses already operate in our neighborhood legally. The planning department has already recommended the approval with restrictions on traffic, clients, and hours of business.
Excuse me, ma'am, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay.
So if you'd wrap it up, I'd appreciate it.
All right.
Okay. So is there anybody here that would like to speak in opposition or have questions? If any of the rest of you would like to, why don't you come sit up front where you can get up here more quickly. We can have your name and address, sir.
Yes, my name is Ed McGinty, and I'm here with my wife Barbara. We live at 12722 Box Drive, and that's in Rolling Oaks, and it's at the intersection of Hollyhock and Box. So the application here is for the tattoo parlor 2 houses away from our house. A little background on myself. My wife and I bought some property about 16 years ago in Rolling Oaks, decided to build a house there, and at that time, is our understanding, and it's still today, it was zoned as a estate residential. To my knowledge, it's still zoned estate residential, not commercial. The property that we have is valued, we think, and based significantly on the zoning that's designated for it. If you put a house in a commercial zone without a zoning change, it has far less value. Why? Because it doesn't belong there. And if you put a commercial property in a residential zone, it has far less value. And again, why? Because it doesn't belong there. The zone designation serves to protect all parties, residential and commercial. Problems develop when residential and commercial interests conflict. Allowing an exception or variance to the status, that is the zoning status of our property, we think lessens or weakens the status of that property. The type of business, a tattoo parlor, is irrelevant. What is relevant is that this business requires customers to travel to and from the residential zoned community. In Pasco County, most commercial businesses are restricted to operating in commercial zone locations. Operating such a business in a residential zone is prohibited. There are several tattoo parlors operating in commercial zones located within 7 miles of the Rolling Oaks community. Our property value is likely to decline when an active business exists only 2 houses away in our residential community. Would you purchase a home under those circumstances? A successful business requires activity to survive, and by that I mean customer activity. The more customers and customer activity there is, the more successful the business. Exceptions made to residential zoning to allow or promote a business is inherently unfair to all other residents affected by the business activities. Should an exception or variance be granted, who will ensure compliance? That burden falls on the community. Animosity develops, and the tranquility of our community is affected.
Thank you, sir. That time is up. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Amy Behrens. I reside at 12700 Sherman Drive. Sorry, I'm really nervous.
That's okay. Take a deep breath.
First, I want to thank you
We're all
for...
nervous up here, too.
You should be. If you knew me personally, you'd be nervous. First, I want to thank you for letting me come up here and speak. I am not opposed to tattoos. I have one.
You don't have to show all of them.
Only one, only one. And I represent both myself and my husband. We took this leap to move to Florida 5 years ago. We actually spent 2 solid years looking for our property. And at the age of 48, decided to live the dream, right? This is live the dream. We thought this was going to be our forever home until we learned there was a business seeking establishment in our neighborhood. I immediately called my realtor, who then told me your property values are going to decrease as soon as this is established. So now we are wondering, did we make the right choice in landing where we did? I just want you to take time to think about these people who have obviously been there longer than me, all the blood, sweat, tears, and money they've invested in their properties for their future. I can clearly start over. That's not a problem. But they may not be able to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Walker. I live at 18304 Oakway Drive. I live on the corner of Box and Oakway. And I have owned and been a property owner and a resident for 35 years in Rolling Oaks. So I think I'm probably the longest lived person there. I am in opposition to approving for a business in our community in this property, and I'm very familiar with the property on Hollyhock. I know exactly where it is, and I've been inside the home, and it is a large piece of property. However, it is not congruous with a residential property. When I bought my home on Split Oak Drive in 1984, I was given a big pack of deed restrictions, and one of these restrictions was there were to be no commercial endeavors, and a lot of other things which have all gone by the wayside or fallen apart. But a business has a whole different connotation in a residential area. It will affect our property values. When people who are interested in buying our homes learn that there's this business, I'm sure that, you know, I don't know, I wouldn't probably even look if I thought that variances were being granted for commercial enterprises in our community. There's a lot of foot traffic. People walk all the time. There's going to be increased traffic coming into our community. People don't know where it is. They're going to be, I don't know how they can restrict the traffic coming in. And there's advertising. You know, is this going to be advertised in the local papers, and you know what is it going to do? I just am in strong opposition to this, and I disagree with the precedent that this will set for other people who may want to bring in commercial. I have a huge building on my property, and I'm thinking, well, you know, I'm sure if I were going to think of a business that it would be strongly opposed as I oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Mel Carrera. I live at 18234 Dubloom Drive in Rolling Oaks in Hudson. First thing I want to say is I wouldn't want your job for any money. You get it.
We're not getting any.
We
so-
volunteer.
My wife and I bought a piece of property and built a home in Rolling Oaks 14 years ago. And several years ago, we bought another piece of property across the street. If we had known at that time that commercial businesses were going to be allowed in the neighborhood down the road, we wouldn't have made those purchases. We wouldn't have built a home in there. My main concern is the property values. I don't know the people who want to do it. There's nothing personal. I have nothing against them. But less than a quarter of a mile from the entrance of Rolling Oaks is a fairly new mini mall. There's a BP gas station there, and there's several empty storefronts that you could put a tattoo parlor in or anything else that you want to put in there. And that's mostly what I wanted to say, but when I was looking at your conditions, when you put them up, a couple of things caught my eye. The hours were 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, to do 8 customers per month. And then it said 14 entrants per day. That's 98 a week, to do 8 customers a month. And in the 14 years that we've been there, the lady says that there's been several businesses operated in that neighborhood. I've never seen one, and I don't know of anybody else here that has seen a business operated in that neighborhood. My main concern is property values. I believe they will drop. And again, they could be nice people, but I'm sure that when they get their profits from their tattoo parlor, they're not going to share the profits with us. So why should we share our diminished, all of us share diminished property values? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. There you go. Thought it was a dime.
My name is Mr. Burke, 12728 Sherman Drive. I come today here on my 61st birthday, celebrating a day, wasting time of my reasons for this being wrong. Number one, the claims to have been appeared to be denied already. They go to an attorney to go through the back door. Why? What's the underlying tones? Number two, my wife and I have purchased several houses, homes prior to do this to increase property value, hard work to make money. We did. Same reason for this experience on this house. When it depreciates, and it will, the bank will still want its full amount. Who covers my loss? Their profits? Your salary. I think not. My wife and I still cover the cost. Number three, is or is not, will or will not, would or would not are going to have an adverse impact on my neighborhood. You already know the lists of what? What you may or may not know is just how much. Just one is too much. Number four, as you can see all over my body, I do have tattoos. My artist is the only tattooist licensed by George Lucas Industries, which, as you know, is Star Wars. He also asks, why are we wandering here as being a tattooist and a homeowner, arguing the request knowing it brings in church into state and opens a big can of worms. Number five, on Tuesday I found out I have cancer. So besides this fight, I have a bigger one to fight, but I will not let my cancer beat me along with this fight because it was caught in a time so I can come back here to fight some more, and I will. Thank you very much. My last words, quoting Black Sabbath, never say die.
Sorry that you have cancer, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rosemary Sieber. I live at 12633 Box Drive. I'm not far from the Dane residence, and I just want to make sure that they know that this fight is not against them personally. It's just against the idea of a business coming into our neighborhood. I, too, am not against tattoos. I have tattoos. And I just want to say that my husband and I moved to Rolling Oaks, which at the time it actually did have deed restrictions, and I'm not sure, it's hard to get through all the websites and stuff. I was trying to see if they were still, in action, but I couldn't really figure that out. But I have to say that I was really disheartened by some of the information that I found, is that the Planning Commission can actually make a ruling without us really knowing that a person only has to live, 500 to 1,000 feet to be notified of something taking place in their subdivision. And I think that personally is wrong, but that's a fight for another day. I think the whole subdivision should be notified because, as other people are stating, it diminishes all property values, not just the residents directly around the business. Let me see here. I would also like to know who would want to buy my home if they knew a tattoo parlor or whatever business is next door to my home or down the street from it. I'm sure none of you would want to buy my house, and I'm sure none of you would want a tattoo parlor or any business moving into your neighborhood if you thought it was going to hurt or damage your property values. I'm asking each one of you to vote against this special exemption. It doesn't matter what kind of people get tattoos. Like I said, I get tattoos. That's really totally irrelevant, or how good of a tattoo artist she is totally irrelevant. This is not against them personally again, but Rolling Oaks is a nice, quiet subdivision of homes, not a commercial area. I could run my publishing business from my house, but I don't do that because I wouldn't do that to my neighbors. I don't think they would want paper trucks coming through our neighborhood. I would not try to change this great neighborhood, and I'm hoping that all of you on the Planning Commission really think hard about what you're going to do to us in Rolling Oaks if you let this variance go through. And I'm also pleading with you to deny this request. I think it's the right thing to do, and I'm hoping that in the future, when other requests come up in state residential neighborhoods like this, that you consider it at least notifying all of us so that we can come and object. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Fred Kufelt. My wife and I live on Brewers Drive, just second house off of East. The traffic will increase. The traffic that there is now is probably about 40 miles an hour. We have enough of those issues. I'm not going to become an echo chamber with what everybody said preceding me because I feel the same way. Mm-hmm. The only thing is that there's going to be some disposal issues when it comes to the aftermath of a tattoo and also health inspections. These are things that need to be addressed. And as far as controlling how many clients you will have, I would not like to see that create a precedence and this business go into the community and create a precedence. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
And lady.
Good afternoon. My name is Dale Sieber. Her husband. We've lived there for 26 years in Rolling Oaks Estates. I live at 12633 Box Drive. Our house is within 500 to 1,000 feet of the petitioner's property, and that's probably why I got notified. They have a sign this big in front of their mailbox, and I guess if you don't see that or live within 1,000 feet, you don't even get notified. So there may have been businesses before that have come into our neighborhood because no one knows about it. This lack of notification is really wrong, but that's subject for another day. First of all, this request for a special exception to our state residential neighborhood should have been denied from the very beginning. Rolling Oaks Estates is and always has been a residential neighborhood and properly zoned that way. If we wanted to live in an area that mixes single-family homes with C2 businesses, we would have moved to US 19. There are numerous places that are currently for rent, it was mentioned, that can accommodate a C2 business such as this, and they're within a half a mile from their property. You cannot sit here today and guarantee us that this business or any other business won't bring unnecessary and unwanted traffic into our community. They say 8 clients a month. Businesses all want to grow. Business can start out small, but can grow, hire employees, solicit more customers, creating even more business-related commerce. We don't want any unnecessary traffic in our neighborhood. Rolling Oaks Estates is a community of homes ranging from $200,000 to $500,000. What happens to our property values when our neighborhood changes little by little to become a mixture of homes and businesses? Our property values go down. That's what happens. My wife and I own and operate our own business. We leave our residential neighborhood and conduct our business outside of where we live. The petitioner should do the same. Because they have hired legal counsel, chances are there might be some legal loopholes, this special exception being one of them. But I stand here today and tell you that even if something may be legal, it doesn't make it the right thing to do. What decision would you make if this was your neighborhood where you raise your kids and grandkids? Your decision today is just plain old common sense. We urge you to do the right thing and deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and it's been a very long afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Patricia Freitag. I live at 12609 Box Drive, a little more than 500 feet from this residence, but still it will impact me. First thing I want to mention, and I think everybody else has mentioned it, but if you drive up and down US 19, if you drive up and down Ridge Road or Little Road, there's an abundance of retail properties. They're offering all kinds of deals, 2 months free, 3 months free, so it's not a money issue. My husband and I had a business. We did not run our business out of our residence. We definitely, rented retail space. It does cut into the bottom line of your business. However, it's the right thing to do. It's not fair to your community. It's not fair to your neighbors. So I'm going to touch again on the property values. And, right now we don't know what kind of signage they're going to have. Are they going to put up billboards? Are they going to get people off of Craigslist? Where are they going to get their clientele? There's a lot of bad actors out there that we really don't want in our neighborhood. We are a wonderful, low-keyed, calm neighborhood with children and elderly. We don't need extra traffic. We don't need, crazy characters in our neighborhood. And so for that reason alone, it probably should be denied. But I'm going to mention something that no one else has mentioned so far, and that's our crumbling roadways. We have already had several people get together. There has been commissions of people that have tried to find out what it would cost to have each homeowner have roadways fixed in front of their property. My property is just a 1-acre property. It would be over $7,000 for me alone. Now, that could be put into my tax roll, but quite frankly, my taxes are high enough the way it is. People that are on the corner, you can double that to $14,000. If we bring more traffic into this community, are they going to cover our roads? Are they going to help fix those roads in the future? I don't think so. So I'm hoping that you see how much opposition you have to this, and you at least consider that it wouldn't be something that you probably would want in your own community as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carol Lamb. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I've been a resident. I live at 12621 Box Drive in Rolling Oaks. Been a resident of Pasco County for over 40 years and have owned multiple real estate since 1976. I chose to live in Rolling Oaks 18 years ago because it was an estate residential property. I've worked and saved my whole career, and truthfully, the property that I live in is part of my retirement plan. If it diminishes in value, that could affect myself and my husband as far as our income and our retirement. So my fear is that allowing a business, any retail business that involves customers coming in the subdivision and parking to be declined. Another point is, we do have deed restrictions. There is a section in paragraph 20 that says, no trade, business, or other type of commercial activity shall be carried on any lot. We do have a lot of walkers in our neighborhood, so traffic would be a problem. I've seen kids out on scooters and bicycles, people pushing carriages, walking dogs. We don't have sidewalks, so increased traffic would definitely be dangerous. And I do have an additional concern about the hazardous waste. I'm not an expert in tattoo, but there is hazardous waste concerns that I have. This is not a medical facility. This, again, is a residential neighborhood. I strongly suggest that you decline this, and thank you for my considerations. As an owner, a resident of Rolling Oaks, and a resident of Pasco County.
Thank you.
My name is James Molyneux. I live at 18228 Dublin Drive. My wife is a broker, licensed real estate broker, and a current resident of Rolling Oaks. This statement was prepared by my wife, who is physically unable to attend. Our argument against SE 7455 is based on documented evidence of property value loss in Rolling Oaks. As a 32-year resident of Rolling Oaks and a currently licensed real estate broker, retired, my wife, Barbara Molyneux, has extensive education and experience in establishing property values. Originally trained by Mike Wells Sr., former county commissioner and Pasco property appraiser, Mike sought Barbara's opinion on property values in Pasco County during his tenure. In order to verify property value losses, I am submitting copies of successive certified bank appraisals evidencing steadily increases in property values from 1988 through 2007. Between 2007 and 2018, multiple variances approved and lack of code enforcement degraded the desirability of this community, leading to bank appraisal number 4, which indicates loss of $137,813 on my property value. No deterioration of my property is cited in the 2018 appraisal justifying such loss. Residents concerned regarding decreased property values at this variance hearing have been continually ignored by this commission. On January 21st, 2020, President Trump stated, quote, home values have seen their values rise by more than $22 billion, quote, close quote. Stock market levels are highest in history. The economy is growing exponentially. Therefore, the banking and real estate crash of 2008 is no longer a viable argument for this loss in property value. The Planning Commission cannot ignore these documented evidences of mass loss in property value. The proof is in the pudding. The President cited as justification for approval should never have been created due to the non-documented evidence of mass property value losses that have inflicted on this community. I'd like to give you a copy of this.
Move to receive and
Sure.
file.
Move. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gary Shearbaum. I live at 18209 Dublin Drive. I've been a resident since 2001 in Rolling Oaks. Most of the people that have already spoken have said a lot of things I was going to say, so I have to get a little creative here. I've got a couple grandsons, 5 years old and 1.5 years old, living within 200 feet of the residence that wants to have the tattoo parlor. Hollyhock Drive is a very quiet street with hardly any traffic because nobody really lives on the street as far as going in and out. So it's a very, very quiet street. So kids play on the street. We're concerned with the hazardous waste. I know that the county requires the pickup by a private company. I don't know if it's once a month or whatever the time frame is on the pickup, but who monitors that? If something gets spilled on the road, does that get taken care of? I mean, we're talking about needles, we're talking about blood, things like that, so has my concern. You've already heard about the property values. That also has my concern. I definitely don't want it hurting my property value, but more so is the the traffic and on the road that doesn't have any traffic right now, that's definitely going to increase because they can't get there without driving on that road. So that's pretty much all I had to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jason Behrens, 12700 Sherman Drive, 2 houses down from the proposed property. My question is, they made a point to say they're only going to have 8 clients a month. That's not a business, that's a hobby. So when they go to say that, that's just an entrance to get the approval, then they're going to increase the amount they're going to do each month. Because eight a month is a hobby, it's not business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rick Chilcote, 12739 Sherman Drive, Hudson, Florida. I'm assuming I live on the entrance to this business, main road. I'm a relative newcomer to this development, July of 17. I represent my wife and my 2 kids, a 13-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter. The reason why we moved to this community specifically was the relative quietness of where we come from North Tampa. It was the major appeal for us, is how it was very little traffic, road traffic. I opposed this. In saying that, I have tattoos. We have family members who have extensive tattoos. Nobody's opposed to tattoos. What I'm opposed to is the potential in loss of property value and setting bad precedent and letting anybody open up a business for special exception. I think it's bad news for everybody in that neighborhood. And being a relative newcomer, there are neighbors that I have here that aren't here, that I feel like it's my responsibility to help protect what they've had for years. And that's really all I actually have to say. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to speak on behalf of all of the residents of Rolling Oaks. First, I must express my heartfelt thanks to the lady who's proposing it, to look after her family and to do good things for the family and support the family. I think that's a very good endeavor. I am firmly in opposition.
Excuse me, sir, I'm sorry. Would you provide your name and address for the record?
So sorry.
Thank you.
I forgot
No
that.
problem.
Sriram Murthy and Kathleen Murthy, 12826 Box Drive.
Thanks for keeping me straight there.
Thank you. Sorry.
I want to make sure you're awake. I was in the zone.
Ma'am,
Excuse me, you
cannot
can't speak from there. You're in the penalty box.
I will try. She's also fighting stage 4 cancer, unfortunately. But one of the reasons we moved back from my posting overseas about a little under 2 years ago was to be in a quiet neighborhood where 8 or 9 of our extended family, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, all live in that neighborhood, to spend hopefully not the last days with the latest inventions of medicine, but to spend some good quiet time with family. Having said that, I'm not going to repeat many of the points said by other folks, but I will say one thing. Matthew, London, Henry, Rowan, these are children in the neighborhood who are constantly walking around after school, and you will see them congregating first at our place and then moving to other houses. I really worry about the safety of children in a commercial setting, as was said by one of the residents. Number 2, I strongly believe that ER, estate residential zoning, means residential. How on earth can any planning department even receive an application saying, I want to have a cemetery, a bar, a place of a body shop in that area? I think all of you are smart enough to independently reject it in your neighborhood. So I would implore you, for all of these reasons that have been stated by our residents and by myself, very humbly, to say no to this application. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Payne. I live at 12810 Box Drive.
Thank you.
When I first heard of this application, I got some correspondence that outlines what the commission's responsibility is and how you all decide whether an application is approved or denied. One of the first things that crossed my eyes were that the objectives were to make sure that the applicants fit in the comprehensive plan. Probably this body wasn't sitting when the comprehensive plan or the plan unit development was approved. So we'll have to make a decision with you folks. The applicant's facts about Santa Cruz probably are very accurate. The fact that there's a real estate business that a planning commission approved years ago, I have no firsthand knowledge of that. I have no evidence that it exists today. That's a fact. The most telling fact is that the applicant admitted to herself that she, in her home or somewhat remodeled business, I'm not sure, had performed tattoos on quite a few people in the surrounding area. Yet there was no license, no business tax receipt, no inspection of the premises. And are we to believe that this person did this illegally? Are we to believe that it was approved by some other being besides a licensing agency? I don't think so. So how can we as a community, or at you folks as sitting here trying to judge the approval or disapproval of this, even think beyond what the own applicant admitted she had done? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ma'am, you cannot speak from there.
You can't talk. Let me see. Okay, has everybody had their say?
No.
Okay, I hope you bring something new.
I am going to bring you something.
Good, good.
Denise, do we have a portable mic?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
You want me to just have them sit down?
Yeah, because we have a portable mic for that
Sir?
purpose.
Sir, why don't you just have a seat and we'll hand you a portable microphone. Can you? All right. All right. You need a motor on that thing.
I would like to do that. I promise
Gets
you
a little loose.
something. My name's Michael Gallagher. I live at 12508 Sherman Drive in Rolling Oaks. I am going to offer you something different, I promise, but the clock is ticking. Get to my notes here. I'm a retired Navy veteran, disabled veteran, cancer survivor, a grandfather. My grandkids come, play in the streets around where we live. I lived here for about 4 years. I think the precedence for home business has been set here. There have been a few that operated without being noticed, but they were not tattoo related. One of them, we talked about this real estate office. It was right across the street from me. Evidently, someone bought it thinking they could start a full-blown business there. There was like 8 cars parked in the front. So I went over there with a bunch of cookies to meet them, and I thought they were like tradesmen, you know, building kitchens, doing something. They were all part of a business venture, a security business, something like that. So I went over to see them, and the young lady was taking out the trash, and she said, "No, we're leaving." Evidently, someone called on them. So there's a full-blown business operated there for quite a few months, and no one said anything. There are an abundance of folks here who oppose this. I understand that, and I understand the fears. Property values are a big deal. My home is all I got. But they've only heard the stereotypical worst-case scenario, and none of them have talked to this family, their neighbor. But families don't talk to each other anymore. They call you, they call the sheriff, they don't talk to their neighbors. So this is about fear and stereotypes. And now property values. I hadn't even thought about that. I understand that fear. I think this family understands community and want to be good neighbors. Last September, I had floodwaters at my doorstep. When neighbors were driving by to take pictures, this family came over and helped me sandbag my home. They want to do the right thing. It's not a commercial venture. This is like your grandfather building furniture in his garage and wanting to sell a couple of them. I don't think she wants to grow this business. She talked about, I asked her, I went over and talked to her. I don't think she just wants to pay for some taxes. Taxes are very high on this property, evidently. I'm here primarily because of the rhetoric in a local blog that shows the fear. It describes bikers riding up and down the streets. It describes safety concerns, traffic concerns, and the onslaught of massage parlors and body shops that will come if they open this can of worms. The rhetoric got me going and thinking about this. These people didn't even get a start before this blog got everybody all fired up. None of the folks that communicate disapproval of this have talked to her. One guy said he was going to. I don't know if he did or not. But no one has talked to their neighbor. That's the big thing about this to me. It's not a commercial business. It's a home business. They request for it's a home business. But unlike others, there's a gunsmith shop, a beauty shop, real estate shop, the one across the street from me. This has happened. It's happened before. It's been there. It's there now. And I just think the fact is this is a tattoo parlor, which is an unfortunate term. I wish it was body art or whatever. I think if she said she was going to be a portrait artist on canvas, this would have flown under the radar. Instead, it's a tattoo parlor, and that's what it said on that request. It's an art form, and she's well aware of all the safety concerns because it's bloodborne pathogen. She understands. I think that we should trust her with some restrictions. And if the restrictions aren't met, then she cease and desist from what she's doing. But I think we should give her a chance. I'm certain there's plenty of neighbors here who would monitor and report any issues if there were. No shortage of that. I think the term tattoo parlor is outdated. It's unfortunate that it causes so much fear and concern. But you know about the commercial business, I talked about that. It was a full-blown business right across the street, and no one said anything because it wasn't a tattoo parlor. And that's unfortunate, but, all right. No, well, yeah.
Okay, no, we don't need anything from the audience.
Okay.
He sat and
Thank you very
was
much for your
quiet the whole time. Okay. Is there anybody else that hasn't spoken, that hasn't had a chance to speak? So if the applicant would like to come back and respond to some of the concerns?
Carrie Felice again, the Hogan Law Firm, on behalf of the applicant. I just wanted to address some of the concerns and points that were raised, and then one of the applicants is going to address some of the health department regulation issues.
There's time limitations, just want to make
Yes,
sure.
yeah, we're going to try to hurry as fast as we can. The main thing is that there's, she's not applying for a variance. That word has been used a lot. This is not a variance. This is a permissible use in every residential zoning district. That seems to be a concern. If that's the case, then, maybe they should be lobbying for a change in the land development code. But it's for a special exception use permit because of trip generation, and she's talking about generating 1 to 2 trips per week. Like someone mentioned, it's not really a business, it's a hobby. That's sort of exactly what she's going for. It's just a home-based, very limited part-time business. I mean, she's not really in a position to go rent out a storefront because she cares for her 3-year-old granddaughter and 2 disabled adults. It's just something she really just wants to do a little bit on the side to give herself some, me time, and to make a little bit of extra money. But we're not talking about, like I said, 1 to 2, has to be by appointment only. That's addressed in the conditions. 1 client at a time. She's talking 1 to 2 clients a week, which is what she always saw when she did this as a side business at her home in California. She has no desire to grow the business. So we're talking about 1 to 2 trips a week. She's not allowed to have any signage, so from outside the home, you would never know there was a business going on. Someone actually said, if there's other businesses in the neighborhood, I've never seen them. Well, you won't see this one either. So, because, most food and package delivery generates likely far more traffic in the neighborhood than 1 to 2 clients a week to her home would. That's no more impact from the outside viewer than if they have a friend over for coffee a time or 2 a week. So, do you want to talk about the other stuff real quick before we run out of time?
Okay. Well, I only have a minute and 20 here. Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Klaus Dehner. I'm the husband of the applicant. I'm at 12620 Sherman Drive, and a copy of my statement should be on file. Regarding the alleged impact of a small private tattoo studio on the Rolling Oaks estates, the burden of proof is really on those making the allegations. The decision must be based on verifiable facts and not allegations. I want to address the contamination request or concern. Historically, the amount of waste generated by my wife's business is minuscule. All waste is disposed of under strict health department guidelines. And my wife has completed regular bloodborne pathogen training. Her tools are sterilized and autoclaved, and her shop documentation and procedures have set the standard for Santa Cruz County. There's simply no conceivable risk of contamination. On the other hand, statistically, over 10% of the notified households may have family members with type 2 diabetes, as do I. And those people daily dispose of test strips and lancets in an uncontrolled manner. There are calls that my wife should open her business in a commercial area because of the type of clients she carefully screens and selects by appointment only. But her studio is better suited to a private setting than a strip mall. From a cross-section of her previous clients, a pro athlete who did not want to draw public attention, police officers getting a matching tattoo to honor a fallen brother, a cancer survivor getting a tattoo to cover her mastectomy scar. All of them were seeking a private studio where they can feel comfortable to share their story away from the impersonal environment and public eye of a strip mall studio. And I would also want to add that the majority of the affected households that have been notified did not oppose or support the studio. They just simply didn't care enough. Only, a fraction of the affected households are in opposition, and most of the letters of opposition are actually outside of the targeted area. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Please. Okay. All right.
I have a question of the attorney.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I didn't want to leave. I thought you might.
The conditions that are in our agenda packet, were you involved in the writing of those conditions?
Staff prepared all those conditions. We didn't have any input. We don't object to any of the conditions, but those were all prepared by staff or came directly from the LDC as standard conditions.
So Denise, is it just what you guys did as standard?
If I can go over the conditions, and I'll tell you which ones are standard. So the condition number 1 is based on the applicant's request. It's by appointment only. That is also going to be talked about again in condition 3. Condition 2 is also based on the applicant's request. Condition 3 is 100% standard, and it comes directly from 530.21 in the Land Development Code. That basically states that it's limited to the existing owner's applicants, doesn't run with the land, and if the property is transferred or sold, it becomes null and void directly from Land Development Code. B, directly from Land Development Code. C, directly from Land Development Code. D, directly from the Land Development Code. E is directly from the Land Development Code. F, G, H, directly from the Land Development Code. Number 4 is a deed restriction that we have brought up in the past because there are some locations that do have deed restrictions, and they're not clear to us whether there are deed restrictions or not deed restrictions. So we place that condition, but that is a standard condition that we use. Condition number 5 is very specific to the use because it is regulated at the state level, and we included that condition. Condition number 6 is a standard condition for all your special exceptions because they all have a potential for revocation based on violation of conditions of approval, or code enforcement can also go out to the properties. And condition number 7 is also a standard condition where we request that the applicant notarize and sign the agenda memo with conditions of approval.
I have a question too, but I wasn't sure if you were done, so.
Well, I'm not done, but you can ask a question.
Okay.
The chairman
So-
says it's okay.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
For the attorney, so one of the residents made an allegation that this use would violate the deed restrictions for Rolling Oaks. What is your, and I realize there's a condition that says that you're subject to whatever more restrictive conditions there are, but what is your position regarding that? I mean, why, if she's correct, then it wouldn't matter whether we approve this or not because it would violate the deed restrictions. So what is your position on that issue?
Right. I have not conducted a title search on the property. I have been provided with some copies of some extremely old deed restrictions that appeared that they might encumber one of, my client owns 2 parcels, one of the parcels that they own. If the deed restrictions remain enforceable, which, once very old deed restrictions, there's a question about that. That would be a civil matter between someone with authority to enforce the deed restrictions and my client.
So you're saying you would not comply with the deed restrictions?
She's saying she's not sure if they're enforceable is what I think she's saying.
Why wouldn't they be?
Chapter 712 of Florida statutes is known as the Marketable Record Title Act, and it requires that deed restrictions be preserved in a very specific manner every 30 years. And again, I've not done a title search on the property, but from a cursory glance at the public records, I don't see where these deed restrictions were ever preserved beyond their 30-year anniversary. So, but that's an issue that would likely have to be litigated in a court.
No, I understand. I just wanted to hear what your position is. Okay, so I have one more question, but I don't want to interrupt you again.
Go ahead.
So, well, I'm on a roll, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Denise, can you go back to H on the priors, the conditions? So I realize that H is straight out of the code.
Yes.
But the applicant's representing that they're not going to do more than 1 or 2 trips per week. And H, in theory, allows them to do more than that.
336 a month.
So I guess my question for you is kind of an enforcement issue, which is if the planning commission were to impose a condition that said they cannot have more than 2 clients per week, is that something that code enforcement has the ability to enforce? And if so, how?
No. I can't think of how code enforcement would have the ability to enforce that.
I mean, I guess, do they have cameras that they could place there to see if they're, I honestly don't, it's a fact question. I don't know if, if it's a day, a code enforcement officer could sit out there all day and just count them, okay?
Yes.
But I don't imagine a code enforcement officer is going to sit out there for a week or a month.
Correct.
So that's why I'm asking, do they have the ability to enforce a condition that's based on per week?
My first thought of that would be that they do not have the ability to enforce that condition because it would require literally sitting out there the entire week. Or I suppose if there's a violation of that condition, from my experience in code enforcement, because I was a code enforcement officer in the past as well, is code enforcement receives information based on affidavits. So there could also be affidavits from the general public that has witnessed more than
That would still require somebody to sit
Correct.
to watch for a week,
Yes. Mhm.
which
Correct.
doesn't seem very realistic.
It's not realistic.
And I don't think that the applicants would be opposed to a stricter condition than H as long as it didn't affect their personal comings and goings. They have 4 adults that live in their house and they might want to have 6 people over for Thanksgiving or 8 people over for the granddaughter's birthday party. So as long as it was limited to clients for the home-based occupation. Specifically, I don't think they would be opposed to something less than 14. Because I don't think there's ever in a million years that she planned to have 14 people a week get tattooed. She doesn't have that kind of time, I don't think.
Well, to be clear, H is all trips to the residence. It's not just, what H is saying is that if you include their family trips and the client trips, it can't exceed 14 per day.
That's in a day, that's a lot.
Right, but I understand that, I'm just saying that H doesn't distinguish. H is, and that's intentionally we're drafted that way because the code enforcement officer can count trips. I mean, he can sit there for a day and see how many people come and go. When you start getting into a week or a month or trying to distinguish between family trips versus client trips, that's why I asked the question. I don't know how code enforcement can enforce that condition. There may not be a way, I don't know.
Michael?
Thanks. Denise, there was, in the applicant's letter to us, there's in her testimony, she stated there were other businesses that were operated out of that property. Is there any record of that actually being the case?
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because I do have a response to that. So when we received the original narrative that stated that the reason why the location was so, they really liked the location was because the way that the detached structure was set up it was set up as a cosmetology salon. So I researched business tax receipts. There are no business tax receipts from that location. However, I did go to the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, Bureau of Cosmetology, and there was a salon named Kiva Salon 2 that had a mailing address to that location. However, it did say that their physical address was on US 19. So, of course, one can assume and whatever. What I'm gathering is potentially that person may have done a few things from his or her house, being at that location, but there is no
That's
business
where the
tax
owner
receipt.
lived.
Right, no business tax receipt from that location for any type of business there.
So there's no history there.
Correct.
In my opinion, there's a huge disconnect between the applicant saying, hey, I only want 8 cars a month, but having the ability with personal and business use, 336 cars a month or trips a month. That's a big difference. I will say that one thing I did know, I've sat and listened to a lot of testimony, as all of y'all have throughout the years. The gentleman that came up and actually handed us appraisals and made it part of the public record, I think that's the first time I've actually ever seen someone say, here's evidence that this, I don't know that I necessarily agree with what he submitted into evidence, but at least he said, here's some evidence that it's going to hurt my property value. So I just want to say thank you because it sort of is refreshing to see that from time to time. But I honestly feel like, a commercial business ought to be in commercial zoning. And that they're stated in this, in the record, the applicant stated they're not going to have employees, but there's nothing in the official documents to prevent them from having employees. And so I'm not inclined to support this.
Okay, is there any? Hold your applause, we're not done. So, anything else from up here? Are you making a motion?
I'm moved to deny.
So, to be clear, and the reason I had Denise put the criteria up here is because staff's recommending approval of the application, if you're going to recommend denial or make a motion for denial, you have to cite which of the special exception criteria you believe they do not meet.
Okay.
That's why I've asked Denise to put them up here so you can.
That's not them, though.
So this is them.
It is?
Yes.
I thought she had another one up.
That was for rezoning.
I had by
That was for rezoning.
in error stated,
Okay.
put the
All right.
rezoning ones.
This is the correct one.
Okay. Well, I don't believe it's consistent. There has been testimony that they will increase traffic.
You believe
And I believe that to be the case.
So you believe it doesn't meet number 2?
Right.
you done?
Sir, this is to the planning commission. You cannot be making comments from the audience.
So 1 and 2, I think, are applicable.
Okay, so
So if it's 1, we've had this discussion in the past.
Yeah, well,
So,
that's your job as the attorney.
well, there is a compatibility policy in the comprehensive plan. Is that the one you're relying on?
Yeah, I don't believe that a commercial business ought to be in a residential neighborhood. So
So you don't believe?
I think that's the compatibility issue.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull up that comp plan policy. Do you know which one? It's like 1.10.
I think it's 1.10.1 or something like that.
I just want to make sure that's what you're talking about. It's in chapter 2, though.
Yeah, 1.10.1, so I'll bring it up.
Last time you made a motion for denial, this is the one you relied on. I just want to
Right,
verify
right.
that this is the one you're talking about.
Sorry, nothing
You're
can
making
ever.
me sick.
I apologize. Then everything with 1 point, whatever, let's see. 1.10.
There you go. There's a good idea.
There you go.
Thanks, Terry. All right. See if,
You're
geez
still,
Louise.
let's just
I just want to be able to show it to you on the screen as it, in its entire glory.
You can do it in 2 different. Just scroll up a little bit.
Well, yeah, that absolutely applies.
So you're looking at the existing development patterns and
Yep.
approved development in the area?
Yep.
Okay. So your motion is to deny based on inconsistency with the comp plan, specifically policy 1.10.1, and not complying with criteria number 2 about increased traffic.
Yep.
I have a comment, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion.
I second
Comment?
the motion.
Okay. And we have a second for
Okay.
the discussion.
Sorry. The only thing I wanted to mention, there was the yoga studio that came before a special exception last time. And it was allowed to have, I believe, 8 clients and an instructor.
It was a little
3
bit different. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It wasn't a
Okay.
home occupation. It was a special exception for a private school.
Okay,
So it was a little different. It
Right.
wasn't within that parameters within 530.23.
okay. Regardless, I guess there'd be probably about 8 times, I guess there's by about 27 trips a day. So I'm just want to put that in perspective, something that we did approve, and there would be, that's going to happen. And that's all.
Okay.
Denise,
Go ahead.
Denise, just a question. As far as home occupations, I'll take a daycare or somebody that wants to watch 2 or 3 kids at their house that aren't their kids. Does that require a special exception like this?
Yes, it would require a special exception.
If they're doing it as a business.
I guess I just have to ask the same question of the planning commission members.
With the daycare,
that
I would have to
change?
take a look at the state statute, but because there's some preemptions for under Department of Children and Families, where if you're less than a certain number of children that you're taking care of, it's considered permitted use and zoning is preempted, as is the same case with the Agency for Healthcare Administration, and when you have you're taking care of adults or people stay over, that type of thing. There's a cutoff from the perspective of whether something is considered a residential treatment and care facility. That cutoff is 7 or more. So if it's less than 7, so 6 or less, that is preempted to the state. Zoning cannot get involved. I believe it's the same thing with taking care of children, but I would have to double check for you on that.
I was just
So there's
curious,
a
'cause obviously
threshold.
that would create a whole lot more traffic, and I realize that, to me, it sounds like at least part of the confusion is that the 8 customers per month was in the finding of fact, not in the conditions. The conditions goes to 14 trips a day,
Because
which
that's
is
a
a lot more
standard
than,
condition
yeah.
of the LDC, then, yeah.
I mean,
To be clear, this is why I asked you about the enforcement
Right,
issue. I mean,
sure.
you could impose a more stringent condition. The question is whether the county could realistically enforce it.
Yeah, and I don't know that it would make a difference up here. I asked that question because, I mean, if somebody wants to watch 2 or 3 kids as a minor home occupation, would you have the same opinion is all I ask.
Every time we do this, it creates a
Mhm.
compliance issue with the county.
Sure.
And I'm always concerned about that.
Mhm.
Because
It's not enforceable.
Because I've heard the complaints, and you try to do something about it, and once the nose is under the tent, you can forget about it.
Now, with that said, I'd like to refer to page 2 of 5 of the documents we received. On June 6, 2019, they approved dog daycare. On May 9th, 2019, massage therapy. On November 15th, 2018, another dog grooming facility. Now, these are all with conditions. On September the 10th, 2014, a petition for firearm sales.
I just want to be clear, though, those are just examples of other special exceptions for home occupations that generate trips that have been approved by the Planning Commission, not specifically in this neighborhood. The one that's in this neighborhood is the one that's located 250 feet southwest, which was approved in 2001. But when I looked at the actual petition on that one, it did not have trip generation at all. Because our code prior to 2012 did not have the distinction between a home occupation, a minor home occupation, a major home occupation, and a minor home occupation that has trip generation. Previously, minor home occupations were not permitted uses at all, or accessory uses at all as they are today. So for that purpose, that realtor who came in 2001, who I believe doesn't live there any longer, came in and applied for a home occupation, but that's the only one that's in that actual neighborhood.
But I'm going to the point is that you're denying because it's in this home or in this community. But of course, it doesn't say where these were at. It just says these are appointment-only businesses related to visits. And it lists about, what, 7, 8 we have here. So I'm just trying to figure out here if we deny this, I think somebody would be smart enough to come back and say, hey, why did you deny it based on the fact that in the past you've approved these kinds of things? But anyway, just food for thought.
I think every one of these has to stand on their own merit. And I don't know that you necessarily create precedents in these situations, but.
I would think they would, but that's up to legal counsel to.
Well, I think most of the objections have been related to how it might affect property values. So not trips. I think that's really the whole crux of the matter, is whether you believe that it does or it does not affect or could affect someone's property value. My feeling as an expert in the real estate business for over 40 years is that it does affect the property value. And the fact that there may be a real estate business in the neighborhood may not have as much effect on property values as a tattoo parlor or a massage parlor or something like that. Mike said they have to stand on their own merit, and I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think that you can presume that because you've approved a special exception in the past in some other neighborhood, that you have to approve this special exception. I mean, every special exception is fact-based. So, and there's unique facts here. I mean, for example, there is a deed restriction. While it may or may not be enforceable, there is at least some evidence of intent of this neighborhood to not have commercial uses in their neighborhood. So that fact may not be in existence in other neighborhoods where we've approved something. So you can't, they're all fact-based.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, we'll call the question. We have a motion and a second to deny. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries.
Does the clerk need a roll call, or you're good?
Just
Okay,
one nay.
all right.
Just one lone voice in there.
That's right.
Move to adjourn.
Aye.
I think we got to move. Got a second on that one.
Yes.